stand up on your feet, please. Comfortable
Name.
Tommie Douglas Benefield Jr.
Can you spell those?
Yes, ma'am. Tommie. Middle name Douglas, Douglas. Last name Benefield, Benefield, and Jr.
And what was your relationship to Doug Benefield?
I'm Doug's first cousin.
Okay. How close were you and Doug?
Doug and I were completely attached, connected all the way through his adult life at varying times from daily to semi-annually, certainly quarterly, though the whole entire adult life.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm currently employed by a major airline out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I run a flight school or a portion of a flight school in Vero Beach, Florida, 3 days a week. It's a full-time job.
Okay. And were you and Doug close about flying?
Yes, ma'am. He followed me into the Navy. I was a Navy pilot off aircraft carriers, and Doug stayed with me in the months prior to him going into the Navy. He went through aviation officer candidate school, went through flight school, and then flew for 3 years and 2 deployments off aircraft carriers like I did. Same aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, as a matter of fact.
Okay. How old was Doug Benefield when he died?
All right. He was 5 years younger than me. I'm 68 now. That was 4 years ago, 64. He was 59, I believe.
About how tall was Doug?
5'9", 5'10" at the most.
Okay. Approximately how much did he weigh at the time?
My guess is 160, 165. He was slender and fairly small for a man.
Okay. And before Doug moved to Florida, where did he live?
Before he moved.
Before he moved down here to Bradenton, Florida, where did he live?
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to pick a year at that point. I'm sorry. He had a home all the way up until his death in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, just north of Charleston. 701 Preservation Place was the address.
Okay. And he lived at that address before moving to Bradenton, Florida, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And then he rented the house out when he moved to Bradenton for visitation of their daughter.
Okay. And before he met Ashley, who did he live with at the house?
The house for multiple years was Doug, his longtime wife Renee, and their daughter Eva. That's prior to Renee's death in 2015, December of 2015.
Okay. So Renee died in 2015. Do you know how she died?
Yes, ma'am. She died of a undiagnosed heart ailment, cardiac arrest.
Okay.
Hold on. Lack of qualifications?
Yes.
Overruled on that basis.
Was Renee Eva Benefield's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you say that date again? Was 2015 that she died?
I believe it's December 2nd, but I may have the day off, but not the month of 2015.
2015. All right. And I want to ask you now, switch to Ashley. So about how long after Renee died did Doug meet Ashley?
9 months.
Okay. When did you first meet Ashley?
I met Ashley in the spring of 2017. I believe the date was either March 14th or April 14th.
And did you know about Ashley before you met her?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How did your meeting come about?
I was flying for Southwest Airlines as captain at the time. They changed my schedule like they do many times in the airline world. And I ended up not overnighting in Baltimore, Maryland, and they sent me to Charleston, South Carolina. Because I was going to Charleston, I texted Doug and said, hey, I'll be in to Charleston tonight. I'd like to have dinner. And he said, great. Text.
Sustained.
Okay. During your conversations, did he mention the name Ashley?
In the second text chain, which is entered.
Sustained.
I'm asking because...
I can answer the question, ma'am. When I arrived in Charleston, I texted Doug, and his text to me specifically was...
You can't speak about what Doug said to you.
Okay.
But during the text messages, did he indicate to you there was a female involved?
Yes, that's the first mention of Ashley to me, that we were not going to have dinner at the airport, and that I was to take Uber up to Mount Pleasant to meet them.
Okay. And was that at their house?
That was at Doug's house. Yes, ma'am. 701 Preservation Place.
Doug's house at the time. And how long were you with them, the two of them together?
4 to 5 hours. We started at the house. We ended up going back to my hotel, getting a piece of medical technology, medical device that I was a master trainer in that device. We had dinner together at a pizza restaurant across from the hotel, and then went back to my room in the hotel, the three of us, and certainly 4 to 5 hours that day.
And during this time, did you have multiple conversations with both of them?
We had conversations about everything, especially about how they met,
Okay.
starting at the house, ending at the hotel.
And what did Ashley say about how they met?
She talked about how they met at a political event, a meeting, where Doug and his business investors were.
Personal knowledge.
Bennett's statement.
Yeah, overruled.
You go ahead.
Both Ashley and Doug told me about how they met the first night at a political meeting, how Ashley had reached out to him before that meeting, They showed me text messages between them for the 10 days between the first meeting and her second meeting with him up in Charleston, Mount Pleasant. They talked about how they had mutual interests, mutual alignment, how they were looking for the same thing in a relationship. They talked about, Ashley talked specifically about her fibromyalgia and pain associated with her ballet dancing days. Ashley talked about her mother, her upbringing, about her father, about the separation there.
Okay.
Do you have an objection?
Yes, sir.
On the basis?
Hearsay.
It's my
defensive.
understanding this is the defendant's statement.
Yes.
Or overruled.
Okay, let me stop you there. So she said that her and Doug met at a political event.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and at the time that you were meeting with them, were they married?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ashley indicate to you when they got married or how long they had been married?
Yes, ma'am. 13 days from first meeting.
That they got married 13 days after they met?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ashley indicate where they got married?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that?
I was in Mount Pleasant or Charleston. Doug's best friend at the time, Tripp, married them.
Okay. Did Ashley ever discuss with you that she carried a gun?
Yes.
And what did she say about that?
She said that on their initial meeting, in the political meeting, that she and Doug's traveling partner in business went outside of Secret Service people, and she showed him the gun she was carrying at that event in her bra.
Okay. And she talked to you about this during your meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to jump forward a little bit, but did you have any conversations that night about them wanting to have a child, or was that a different time?
I don't remember us talking about it that first night, no, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember a conversation with Doug and Ashley, specifically Ashley, about them wanting a child?
I believe it was later in the late spring, the next time that I visited with them.
Okay. And to your knowledge, could Doug have children?
He had a vasectomy after having his daughter with Renee, his longtime wife.
Did Ashley?
I'm sorry, so no,
Okay.
he couldn't have children.
Did Ashley speak about that in front of you, Ashley and Doug together, or Ashley separate about the vasectomy?
They did when they were discussing having Doug have a vasectomy reversal. Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Right. And to your knowledge, did that reversal ultimately go through?
Yes, ma'am, and I believe Ashley actually paid for it on a credit card. They talked about that.
Okay. And ultimately, she became pregnant?
Yes, 3 months after the vasectomy reversal, she became pregnant. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did they end up, I'm going to skip a little bit forward now.
Yes, ma'am.
Did they end up having a wedding reception?
They did. I believe it was June of 2017. I was single parenting at the time, and I wasn't able to attend, but it was in Charleston, South Carolina, at the home of one of Doug's business partners.
Okay. You mentioned something about ballet dancing, so I'm going to ask you about that. In your meetings and discussions with Ashley, did she indicate she was interested in the ballet?
She spoke about the fact that she had been a ballet dancer, that she had performed in, I'll call them shows, back, I believe, in Maryland, where she grew up. And by the time that I first met Ashley, they had formed the ballet company called the American National Ballet in Charleston. And they were, at the time that I first met her, they were working on getting that ballet company up and running.
Okay. And was this going to be a large endeavor?
Several $1 million, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Up to 40 dancers were hired. Yes, ma'am, large endeavor.
Okay. And do you know what Doug's role was in that? In your discussions with Ashley, did you find out what Doug's role was?
Yeah, Doug and Ashley talked about it on the first night I met her, about how they founded the ballet, how Doug did the online limited liability corporation work, founded the name, resurrected that name, how they worked together to try to build a ballet that was diverse and open to more than one body size, body shape, body color. That was the philosophy of the ballet as they explained it. That was Ashley's dream.
And how was it funded?
It was funded several ways. A number of Doug's business partner, friends, and Doug himself invested money. They had a major, let's say, arts benefactor in Charleston, is a personal injury lawyer who was going to be the primary major donor. In Doug's case, Doug was working on very advanced technologies and patents at the time. And in his case, he didn't have any savings or cash in the bank. So he sold his future stock grants and options to other investors to put his own money in, about $100,000 in his case.
So while this ballet was in development or launching, did Ashley ultimately become pregnant? I know you said she became pregnant several months later, but I'm just trying to get a timeline.
Yes, ma'am. So in February of 2017 are the records and what they told me about founding it. I met her in maybe a month or two after that on that Charleston overnight. They held the first ballet event, and I was invited in May of 2017. Once again, single parent, I wasn't able to attend. She got pregnant in July, and we talked about that multiple times. And the next month in August was the large launch, which me, my business partners, my veteran friends, supporters of Doug all went to Charleston for that major launch in August. It was at a place, I'm sorry.
And at that time, was Ashley pregnant in August?
She was pregnant. I don't remember if she knew or not. It was
Okay.
1 month after pregnancy Emerson was conceived.
And at some point, did Ashley move away from the South Carolina home?
Yes, ma'am. We had the August ballet big launch. 2 weeks later, Doug moved Ashley down to Ashley's mother's home in Lakewood Ranch. Drove down one day, dropped her off, and drove back the next day. That's late August.
And what was the understanding, what was Ashley's understanding of why she was moving and what was going on?
In text conversations and personal conversations with Ashley,
Defendant's statement.
It's going to be the defendant's statements.
We approach her.
Yes.
To you that she was talking about, okay, so I believe we were talking about the reason that Ashley went to Florida.
yes, ma'am.
So in your discussions with Ashley, either text or in person or on the telephone, did she indicate to you that she was going to Florida because she was sick? And
That was the initial indication, yes, ma'am.
and her mother could better take care of her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Throughout the time that you saw Doug and Ashley together, how did Doug act?
Particular on the opening night and all the way through their relationship. Opening night, totally in love, both of them in love with each other. Doug was always very respectful. He was very, very respectful with her in front of me, both that initial night and then the next weekend, I believe in May, that I spent down in Sarasota, Bradenton with them. Every time he was respectful of her. They were in love. They never showed anything in front of me other than caring for each other.
That was going to be my next question. So did you see anything other than that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross. Mr. Taylor, as I've said before, you're free to use the podium if you prefer to cross from table. Yes, sir.
Morning, Mr. Benefield.
Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
You were a naval pilot, correct?
Navy pilot, yes, sir.
And I think you mentioned the training that you had briefly, correct?
I went through extensive training all my 30-year career, yes, sir.
Okay. Some of that training included close quarters combat, did it not?
No, sir, never.
No hand-to-hand training at all?
No, sir.
Do you remember having a conversation where you related information about close quarters combat?
Yes, sir. I was in charge. I was the senior.
Do you remember that conversation
Which one, sir? I don't know which one
about
you're
close
speaking about.
quarters combat?
If it was in perspective of me running security and self-defense training for my airline, not the Navy.
You received no such training in the Navy?
No, sir, never.
Did Doug admit to you firing the gun in the
Objection.
kitchen of their home?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield, do you recall that Ashley had left your cousin Doug in the fall of 2017,
Yes, sir.
specifically September 18th of 2017?
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that date and the events.
Do you recall writing to Ashley Benefield in a text in May of 2018, I'm a fan of yours? It's his following. So, Mr. Benefield, following Ashley's leaving your cousin Doug in September 18th of 2017, were you a fan of Ashley Benefield's in May of 2018?
I don't remember specifically that word, but it may have been in our lengthy phone calls and text messages from January through June, possibly.
You expressing support for her?
Support for her story of the case, yes, sir.
Yeah. And did you tell her, in fact, at one point, she married the wrong Benefield?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you feel that she married the wrong
Objection.
Benefield? Thank you. So, Mr. Benefield, Thank you. So, Mr. Benefield, after expressing your support for Ms. Benefield in 2018, several months after she left your cousin Doug, by the way, do you know why she left your cousin Doug?
The initial reason or the second reason, sir?
Do you know the reasons that Ashley Benefield gave your cousin Doug as to why she left him?
I'm going to need the source. Is this from,
Well, I'm not going to ask.
was it being offered for the truth? I mean,
Yeah, it's not being offered for the truth, and I'm not going to go into the substance. I just want to know if this witness knows.
oh,
You can answer. Did Doug share with you the reasons why she left him?
He shared two different reasons.
Yeah, all right. So now you express several months following that you're a fan of hers, and do you also not say to her that she married the wrong Benefield?
I don't remember that specific text in the 6 months of open communication between she and I.
All right. Let me see if I can refresh your recollection, Mr. Benefield.
Objection.
oh,
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
yes.
Maybe see what you're showing.
Sure. I'm going to show you a document. Why don't you take a moment and look at it and tell us if that refreshes your recollection as to whether or not you suggested to Miss Benefield she'd married the wrong Benefield.
It does not say anything about marrying the wrong Benefield.
Does it say,
Hold on. Sir, has that document, without identifying it, we need to lay the predicate.
Mrs. Benefield, is that document reflective of the communication that you shared with Miss Benefield?
I believe it's correct and unaltered.
And it's between you and Miss Benefield, is
Yes,
it
sir.
not?
Yes, sir.
And it's accurate, is it not?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, may I approach?
Yes.
You say thank you.
Yeah, approach, Mr. Taylor.
Does the document I've shown you, Mr. Benefield, refresh your recollection of that particular exchange?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you tell us, your recollection having been refreshed, whether or not, tell us what your response was to Ashley's text?
This is 6 months, and you want me to just focus on
Just tell us
one
what your,
line. Is that
Mr.
what correct,
Benefield,
Mr. Taylor?
just tell us what your response was to Ashley's text, your recollection having been refreshed.
Ashley says in the text,
Mr. Benefield,
Sustained.
please, tell us what your response to Miss Benefield's text was, now that your recollection has been refreshed.
there are multiple on the page, sir.
Mr. Benefield, I think you know what I'm referring to. Would you please answer my question?
I would like to answer it as it pertains to what she said.
I didn't ask you what she said, Mr. Benefield. I asked you to please tell us, your recollection having been refreshed, what you said.
Would you like me to read
And
that
Judge, I would
bubble?
object. We do not need to be reading from this document.
All right. Deputy, would you please take the jury into the jury room? If you could give us 5 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Remember, please don't begin your discussions and deliberations amongst yourselves. That it will physical or Ms. Benefield that she married the wrong person. When we began this portion of the discussion, the question was, did you tell Ms. Benefield that she married the wrong person?
Wrong Benefield.
The wrong Benefield. And I sustained that as hearsay with no exception. I found that it didn't provide impeachment of any prior inconsistent statement. What I did allow was him to testify as to his then existing mental, physical, or emotional conditions or feelings, with the question being, did you feel that she had married the wrong Benefield? There was then the attempt to use these text messages that I still have not seen. I don't know what the substance of them was, but where we were was my understanding, and what I heard was the defense was attempting to refresh the witness's recollection. And what I have said is it sounded like it started to morph into some mix of impeachment and refreshing recollection and some elements of introducing a past recollection recorded. And that's where we're at. So, state your objection.
My objection, first of all, is the predicate has been laid to refresh recollection. But then the witness has not been asked what his recollection is, other than to read it off of the paper, which is commingling past recollection and either past recorded or something of that nature. I think we're commingling the two different things. And if this witness needs to be asked, if it refreshes his recollection, then he can be asked that question without reading the document. I would object to any reading of the document because it is extrinsic evidence if it's being used for impeachment. I do not believe his state of mind is relevant to a material issue in this case. I think the defense is trying to say that it goes to bias, but I'm not quite sure how that fits into it. So My objection would be it's improper refreshing recollection, it's improper impeachment, it's also improper prior recorded recollection, and I would object to that being testified about.
Response, sir?
Yes. So as succinctly as I can, Your Honor, he's a creep. He acknowledged being a creep, and the jury will conclude he's a creep. It goes directly to his character and his bias. And that's why, after he said, yes, it was accurate, I recall it, he cannot bring himself to say it. And the reason he can't bring himself to say it is because he knows that all these women on the jury are going to know exactly what he was referring to. So I am trying to impugn his credibility after listening to everything that he had to say to set up the state's position about how this relationship was so lovey-dovey between Miss Benefield and Douglas Benefield, and what a wonderful relationship it was. Here, we now have this witness very begrudgingly admitting that after Miss Benefield leaves Douglas Benefield, and she leaves the letter, which I know the court has seen because I attached it as an earlier exhibit to a motion, he's still supporting her, and he's not only supporting her, but he's telling her she married the wrong Benefield. In my world, Your Honor, based upon the rules of evidence, I am entitled to go after his credibility, which he has put in question by virtue of taking the witness stand and becoming a witness. I did it the way the court wanted. I asked the magic question, does this refresh your recollection? He said it did. Now I want him to tell me, in response to my question, did you tell Miss Benefield she married the wrong Benefield? And he cannot bring himself to acknowledge it. He wants to talk about anything else but that. And I think, Your Honor, anything that I'm capable of showing where this witness, Doug Benefield's loving cousin, Tommie Benefield, where this witness showed his support for Ashley Benefield after she left Douglas Benefield, goes directly to his credibility. You can't get up there and testify to all of these things about how wonderful this relationship was, and then on cross-examination have to acknowledge that you were still saying you're a fan of Miss Benefield's after she leaves them, knowing the reason she left them. I intentionally didn't go into the reasons to try to be straight with the court, but now I'm attempting to impugn his credibility. And he knows it, Judge. He's looking at me like a deer in the headlights.
I'm going to allow you to respond. I previously mentioned about confining arguments to legal and factual bases. I am also going to direct both sides to refrain from vituperative ad hominem attacks. I don't think we need to resort to name calling. I think it's inappropriate and unprofessional to refer to a witness as a creep. All right. With that said, go ahead for your response.
The first thing, Judge, I don't know if you have the copy of the text message up there. The defense can give it to you. Nowhere in there does it say she married the wrong Benefield. That is not what it said, first of all. And second of all, Tommie Benefield never said that anything about their relationship and the tenor of their relationship once she left. He said, when I saw them together, they looked fine. Just because that changes down the road and he knows they're having problems, I am unaware of how that affects his credibility. He can clearly see that they're having problems later on down the road. I don't see how the timing being different somehow makes him inconsistent and somehow that attacks his credibility or it shows his bias. If Mr. Taylor wants to ask him, were you aware that there were problems after that? Yes, I was aware of that. I mean, in Mr. Taylor's argument, he is impeaching the fact that Tommie Benefield saw them acting loving to each other. If that wants to be impeached or explored, then ask Mr. Benefield if he saw them after that or knew that they were not loving and having that type of relationship. I don't understand the relevance of these types of conversations. I think the defense tends to say everything is about bias, but it has to comport with the rules of evidence, and I would say that this does not.
All right, thank you both very much. So my ruling earlier was that these statements by Mr. Benefield towards defendant were hearsay. I wasn't aware of any exception that would allow them. They appear to be offered for the truth of the matter that is asserted. So I didn't allow them on that grounds. What I allowed was the defense to ask, because there had been testimony by Tommie Benefield that they were always respectful to each other, they never saw anything except care for each other, and they were in love both ways. I think it is an impeachable question to ask, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? But it's not what he wrote. It's what he felt. That's where you're mixing apples and oranges, the defense is. The question that was presented to me was, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? He can answer yes or no. If there's then some extrinsic evidence that may impeach him on that point, I would then have to make a determination is that extrinsic evidence admissible or not? Because if it's a collateral matter that's not material, then as you well know, Mr. Taylor, you get the answer you get. Where we had an additional part of this analysis was the fact that there was a demonstrated lack of memory, because the answer was, I don't know, as opposed to, no, I didn't say that, or yes, I didn't feel that, yes, I did feel that. So then the path we started on was refreshing recollection. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned pre-trial, I expect attorneys to know the differences between impeachment by a prior inconsistent statement, that's one path. Refreshing recollection is a second path, and introduction of past recollection recorded, which is a separate path. And the reason I'm sustaining the objection is because it started off with refreshing, does it refresh your memory, and then we got right back into the documents themselves, which I've already ruled were hearsay. So it's for impeachment purposes only. You can ask him about I allowed you to ask what his feelings were to get into these documents themselves. I don't know how to say it any more clear than that.
So,
if you're refreshing his recollection, then we're going to take that path.
yes, I believe I did that. I believe I refreshed his recollection, and he acknowledged that. So then my question was,
What did you say? And that gets back to the documents. If he says his memory is refreshed, you take the document back, or whatever the thing is that you use to refresh recollection is to be retrieved. And then the person testifies from their own personal knowledge.
so once he said that he recalls, I then asked him if he said that you married the wrong Benefield. That's what I said. I will be happy to go through that again, Your Honor. Now, did I leave the document there when I asked him that? Yes. I didn't feel it was necessary to take the document back. But after he acknowledged that his memory was refreshed, I asked him, did you say that she married the wrong Benefield? And that's where we were when Your Honor sent the jury out. He was trying to come to terms with how he was going to answer that. The other text, Your Honor, is just indicative of continued support for Ms. Benefield.
Sir, this doesn't say what you're asking him.
Thank you, wrong Benefield. Ms. Benefield says, that's very cool. You should be so proud of what you were doing. His response is, thank you, wrong Benefield. What that means, Your Honor, what that suggests is, thank you, you should have been with me.
Sustained.
I assure you, Judge, that any female will draw that conclusion immediately.
That does not match what you're asking, sir. All right, are we ready to bring the jury back in? Do you want to treat this as your mid-morning break? You guys can take 5 minutes.
Can I take 5 minutes, please?
All right, am I going to be allowed to get an answer from him?
I've sustained the objection. All right, so we'll take.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify your ruling. It's my understanding that you said he could ask how we felt.
Correct. The last objection was the questions were going to, what did you write? What did you say in your text messages? Sustained.
And then, so thank you.
So we're clear. Did you feel she married the wrong Benefield?
I've already ruled you could ask that question.
All right.
Anybody outside of the jury or do any, you all go ahead and have a seat. Whenever you find your spots, just sit on down. All right, everyone going to have a seat. Members of the jury, during that break, did anybody discuss the case amongst yourselves, discuss the case with anybody outside of the jury, or do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about? Everybody says no. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Benefield, when we last were assembled, we were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir, I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep our communication open between us.
You know, we've established that you were aware that Ashley left Doug in September of 2017.
Yes, sir.
And we've also established that following that, you expressed your support of her.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I want to direct your attention specifically to the month of November of 2017. Were you aware of a domestic violence injunction that Ms. Benefield sought and obtained from South Carolina court?
Yes, sir, at that time.
And did you express to Ms. Benefield
You ask the question.
your support of her after she obtained that domestic violence injunction?
Sustained.
Did you support Ms. Benefield in November of 2017 following the issuance of a domestic violence injunction?
Not specifically about that, sir.
Do you recall expressing your support on Saturday, November 4th, 2017?
I don't remember that specifically, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield, I'm going to show you a document, see if this refreshes your recollection. Areas that I check refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir. Those appear to be my statements.
All right, recollection having been refreshed, Mr. Benefield, on November 4th, following the issuance of the domestic violence injunction to Ms. Benefield, did you express your support to her?
There are two problems with your question for me, sir. I'm going to ask you.
Would you answer my question, and then you can certainly feel free to explain it.
I was unaware of I believe I was unaware of any result of any pending case in South Carolina at the time I texted that.
I thought you just told us you were aware.
I became aware after the fact when the mutual protection order was entered. I found out about it after the fact, but I don't remember the date of that event as it relates to the November 4th.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
State, any redirect?
No.
Can this witness be released?
Yes. Please state your name.
Eva Benefield,
How do you spell your first name?
EVA,
And how old are you now?
23.
What was your relationship to Doug Benefield?
He was my father.
And who was your mother?
Renee Benefield,
And we heard from the previous witness, she died, unfortunately, at some time before this case, correct?
yes ma'am.
Okay. When did you first find out about someone named Ashley Benefield?
It was August of 2016, about 9 months after my mom passed.
Okay. And how did you find out about her?
My dad was on the phone when he picked me up from school, and he had his phone on speaker, and they mentioned him having a girlfriend, and if he was going to bring his girlfriend to a conference that they had that weekend.
And was that the first time you had any information that there might have been a girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 15.
At the time, were you upset with him about that?
No, I just told him that I trusted him, and if that's what made him happy, that I would be happy for him.
And about how long after that did you find out they were married?
It was 2 days after.
And how did you find out that they were married?
My dad came up into my room, and he said, Eva, we need to have a chat downstairs with Ashley. She was at the house at the time, and I said, I don't think we need to. I understand that you're dating her and you're happy, but please just, give me my space a little bit. I don't want to have a conversation. And he said, no, I think it's really important we do. And I said, the only time that I would want to have a conversation with y'all is if you told me that you were going to propose. And when those words came out of my mouth, he told me that they were married.
Okay. So that's how you found out they were married.
Yes.
Did Ashley eventually move into your house?
Yes.
And that was the house in South Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time, who all lived in the house? Just the three of you?
Yes.
How was their relationship together that you saw?
They were just with each other all the time. It was very lovey-dovey. They were very touchy-feely, PDA. Any event with school or extracurricular that I was in, they were together. They'd go grocery shopping together, go travel together. They never left each other's side.
Okay. And how did you and Ashley get along?
It was friendly at first.
Okay. You said it first?
Yes.
And then what happened?
Over time, she tried to reprimand me a little bit more and kind of step into a motherly role, and I did not like that because it was so short after my mom passed away.
Okay.
Relevance.
Sustained.
And in Ashley's interactions with you, or interactions that she had or disagreements that she had with your father, how did you observe her act?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, it wasn't a good question. Whenever she had a disagreement with you, how would she act?
It was almost temper tantrum-like. It was,
Objection. After evidence. After evidence.
Okay, so it was temper tantrum-like, and you didn't sound like you were finished. What were you saying?
she would go directly to my dad and tell him that I wasn't obeying.
Okay. And did her reactions to you seem to be on the level of the situation, or did she get more angry at the situation?
Usually they were overreactions over small things.
Okay. And how about interactions with your dad? Did you ever hear her argue with your father?
I heard her strongly voice her opinions over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, you said over and over and over again. Is that something that you heard on a regular basis, or something you only heard once?
It was on a regular basis.
Okay. And when she was voicing her opinions to your father, was he ever reacting to that?
No, he would just sit quietly and listen.
Did you ever see them fight?
No.
Verbally fight?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see them physically fight?
No.
How often would you say that Ashley and your father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashley was trying to get her point across that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. And what would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
No further questions.
Cross.
Yes. Morning, Ms. Benefield.
Good morning.
We met previously at a deposition, correct?
Correct.
And I apologize to you for meeting you under these circumstances. I'm required to ask you a few questions based on the testimony that you've given us. You lived in the house at the time that Ashley and your father were first married.
Yes.
And you found out from your father that he had married Ashley when he introduced her to you.
It wasn't when I was first introduced. It was a day after.
So day after, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So your mother had passed away approximately 8 months earlier?
9 months.
9 months earlier. And your father, with no advance knowledge, came and introduced you to his new wife.
Yes.
There was a hole in the ceiling of the kitchen in your home, correct?
Correct.
You know what that hole was, how it got there?
Object.
I don't know if it will or not. Okay.
Can we approach?
Yes.
So I think the question that was pending, Ms. Benefield, was, did you know how?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
Let me back up. You told us there was a hole in the ceiling of your kitchen.
Yes.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round?
Yes.
Consistent with an object?
Objection, speculation.
Let me finish the question.
Consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Overruled.
Were there holes in the drywall of your home?
There was one.
Was it from the closet
No.
outside to the drywall?
No.
All right. Where was
It was near the kitchen.
it? Did you know how it got there?
Yes.
Was the hole consistent with the size of a fist?
Yes.
Was that hole patched?
Eventually.
Who patched it?
My father.
Did you know that your father studied close quarters defense in the Navy?
Yes.
And tell us what close quarters defense comprises.
I'll allow it briefly so she can explain the basis of her knowledge.
Well, let me give the court a little better insight into this. Ms. Benefield, do you hold a black belt?
Yes.
And are you trained in defensive combat fighting?
Taekwondo.
Did you and your father often discuss different styles of defensive fighting?
We had the conversations when I was practicing, when I was
Okay.
10.
And tell us were you trained in close quarters defense?
Yes.
All right. Tell us what it entails.
In hand-to-hand combat.
Okay. And it's the type of hand-to-hand combat where if confronted by a weapon, rather than turning and run, you're trained as to how to remove the weapon from the other person's hands.
Well, you're told to first ask for no conflict, and then if they proceed, yes.
Yeah. In other words, your objective is to take the weapon away.
If there's a weapon involved, yes.
Were you aware that a domestic violence injunction had been issued by the court in South Carolina?
No.
Give me 1 second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
One last question, Ms. Benefield. Was your dad fixated with Ashley?
I think they were fixated with each other.
Did you make a prior state? Whoops. Did you express at any time that your dad, your words, not mine, was fixated with Ashley?
I might have.
Give me just a moment, Judge. Do you remember having your deposition taken?
Yes.
Do I need page and line? And I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, I was just first asking her the question. Do you remember sitting for a deposition?
Yes.
Let me pass to you this document and see if it refreshes your recollection.
Approach.
The word that you had used to refer to your dad's interest in and Ashley was what?
When are you referencing?
In general. Was the word fixated? Was that the word you used?
Yes.
That's all.
Right, redirect.
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be released?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, but no, so you know. All right, Ms. Benefield, you've not been released from your subpoena, all right? And the rule of sequestration has been invoked. What that means is that you can't be in the courtroom anytime that there's testimony being given or evidence being presented. Because this is being shown on TV or the internet or something, you can't watch it outside of court. You can't watch what's going on inside of court. You can't be inside of court. You also may not discuss your testimony with any other witnesses or any of the attorneys. Better practices don't talk about it with anybody else. And none of the other witnesses nor the attorneys can talk with you about what's going on in court. Do you understand all of that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, you're not released from your subpoenas. You need to remain available.
Okay.
All right. But for now, you're excused.
Please state your name.
John William Sant Jr.,
How do you spell Sant?
S-A-N-T,
Where do you live?
in 11327 White Rock Terrace in Bradenton.
And did you live next door to Ashley Benefield and her mother, Alicia Byers?
I did.
Do you still live at that same address?
I do.
Do they still live at the same address?
No,
Okay. Did Ashley have a child when you lived next to each other?
she did.
About how old was the child last time you were together?
At the house, at the neighborhood,
When they were living in the neighborhood?
I'd say 18 months to 2 years.
Okay. And do you remember a day when Ashley came to your house?
Yes,
Okay. Do you remember what day of the week that was?
it was on a Sunday.
And what time of day was it? Light out, dark out?
It was still light, but it was probably early evening. It was between football games.
Okay, so it was between the football games on a Sunday?
Right.
All right. Still light out? What do you remember about Ashley coming over?
From the very beginning.
Right.
Well, I heard a very loud pounding on my door and kind of startled me, but it was loud. And I went and I looked out through the little window, and there wasn't anyone there. So I thought, well, I just went to the back and looked out the back. I even looked out the side and didn't see anybody. And I was thinking, well, one of my grandkids has a friend in that area there. And I thought they might be messing around, but I didn't see anything. So I guess it was a few minutes. Nobody, must be just someone screwing around. And it happened again.
Pounding.
And the pounding happened again, yeah.
I'm having a little trouble here.
All right. Yeah, if we can get you to scoot up a little bit. There you go.
Sorry. What part do you want me to start at again?
Okay, so the pounding started again.
Pounding started for the second time, yes.
Okay, and what did you do then?
At that point, now I'm starting to get a little concerned. Someone's trying to either break in or a home invasion and that. So I went back into my room, went into my closet, and I pulled my weapon out.
Okay. And you say weapon, what kind of weapon was that?
It was a Glock 23, 40 cal.
Okay. So you had your own firearm.
Yes, ma'am.
You pulled that out, and what did you do?
I then came from the closet back towards the door and decided at that point, let's look out the door one more time before I load one in and take it to the door. So I just set it down on the little table beside my chair.
So you set the gun down?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I left, and then I went back to the door. And I looked out again. And then that's when I saw I saw a leg sticking out. Someone was sitting on the stoop.
Okay. So you saw a leg. You think someone was sitting?
Well, they were sitting.
Okay. So what'd you do?
Well, then I kind of noticed who the leg belonged to, or I thought I did. And I went and I opened the door.
And did you know who it was when you saw the person?
I assumed who it was when I looked out the window.
When you opened the door, could you see who it was?
Well, by the time I got the door open, she was standing up.
So you saw who it was?
Yes,
And who was it?
it was Ashley.
Okay. And you kind of pointed over that direction. You see her in the room today?
She's over next to Mr. Taylor. Yeah.
Stipulate that it's Miss Benefield, Your Honor.
Stipulation to ID.
Yes.
Okay. And what did Ashley say when you opened the door?
As soon as I opened the door, before I could say anything, she said, he attacked me.
And is that all she said?
At that point, I said, who? And he said, Doug. He attacked me, and I shot him.
Is that all she said to you?
That's all she said.
Did she have a weapon with her?
I didn't see it at that point.
Did you see a weapon eventually?
Eventually,
Where was that weapon?
it was laying down just to the right of my door where I couldn't see it, where I was standing at that point.
And when did you see that weapon?
Well, after she said, and I shot him, I said, well, then you better come in. And I moved to the left to let her in, and that's when I noticed it lying there on the ground.
Okay. And what was it?
There was a handgun.
What did you do with that handgun?
Once I got her in the house, I told her, I said, I can't leave that out there. No, I don't know whether she responded or not, but then I went out, reached down, picked it up by the trigger guard, brought it back in the house, and set it down inside the door.
Okay. And when you say inside the door, was that on the floor or was there a table?
It was on the floor.
On the floor.
So once you brought her into the house, where did you go?
Once I brought the weapon in, I shut the door and locked it. And I looked at her and I said, what condition is Doug in? And she said, I don't know. Or she said, don't know. She just don't know. I said, where's your mother and Emerson? And she said, at the park.
So you knew her mother and you knew Emerson, her daughter?
Yes,
Okay. And she said at the park?
at the park.
And at some point during this conversation when she was at your house, did she tell you that that gun was hers?
After listening to the tapes, I was able to hear her say it, but it was really faint, yeah.
Okay. Did you call 911?
I did
Have you listened to the 911 call?
many times.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 1.
You can take a look at this. What is this? It's a
Oh, okay, yeah.
911 call?
Oh, okay.
And when you listened to this 911 call, was it an accurate representation of your conversation with the person on the other line?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't me.
Pardon?
Yes, I recognize my own voice.
Okay. The state would enter into evidence State's Exhibit 1.
No objection. Will be received?
What was Ashley's mood when she was there?
I'm sorry, Ashley's what?
Ashley's mood?
Terrified.
Okay. Was she, do you remember her crying?
I didn't remember her crying until I was listening to those tapes, and then it sounded like she was crying, but I just couldn't get any words out. After that last statement about where her mother and daughter were, that was really the last coherent amount, any words that ever came out of her mouth that I could understand. At that point, it was just stuttering and shaking and sobbing.
Okay. So you did not have any other conversations with her, meaningful conversations with her after that?
No, the rest of the conversation was a 911 operator.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to publish State's Exhibit number 1.
Members of the jury, when physical evidence, documents, photographs, video or audio recordings, and so forth, are admitted or received by the court, they may be published to the jury. This means shown to the jury. Depending on the type of evidence, it might be shown to you on the overhead screen, through the sound system, handed out for you to look at, or shown to you. Evidence that is admitted or received by the court will be available to you during your deliberations, and you will have as much time as you need to review and consider the evidence. Members of the jury, you are about to listen to an audio recording. The court instructs you that the recording has been edited to eliminate irrelevant portions that would not add to your understanding of the case. The fact that the recording has been edited should not concern you in any way and must not impact the way you listen to, view, and consider the evidence.
Thank you, Judge.
Finally, you are about to hear a recorded conversation. This recorded conversation is proper evidence, and you may consider it just as any other evidence. You are also going to be furnished a transcript of the recorded conversation. The recording is the evidence, and the transcript is being provided to you only as a guide to help you follow along as you listen to the recording. The transcripts are not evidence of what was actually said or who said it. If you notice any difference between what you hear on the recording and what you read in the transcript, you must rely on what you hear and not what you have read. Also, any notes that you want to make during the playing of the audio should be on your notepads. Once we have played this audio for you, the transcript, as I said, is not evidence. You will not be allowed to keep the transcript, and the transcript will not go back with you during your deliberations. But the audio recording will be available. So you just take one and pass it down. Help yourself, sir. Yeah, if you want some water. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Manatee County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
Hi, my address is 11327 White Rock Terrace.
Okay, can you repeat that for me to make sure I have it correctly?
The house next door, honey, what's your address? Okay, it's right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him. Now, we've not gone over there yet.
Okay, what's his name?
Who?
What is his name?
His name is Doug Benefield.
Okay.
I have not gone over there. I'm not
Okay,
going to go back.
I don't want you to go over there. Stay on the line just one moment. I'm going to connect you over to the sheriff's dispatch, okay?
Okay.
One moment.
Calm down, honey. Calm down.
What is your name, sir?
My name's John Sant, KMT. I live next to
Officer dispatch on a recorded line. This is Gabby. How can I help you? Hey, Gabby, it's Kieran. On the 11327, I have John Singer on the phone. He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband.
Okay. All right, I'm going to get that on the screen, okay?
Okay.
Which screen is this for?
The 11327 White Rock Terrace.
Okay.
That's my address.
That's your address? What's her address? Where does it occur at?
Her address is right next door. I believe it's 11331.
She's on the corner?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, on the corner. She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here. Do you want me to go over and look at anything, or just wait for the...
No, I want you to just wait for the police, okay?
All right, if you could just get them here quick. She came in, she was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her, and she shot him.
Okay. I'm just getting that on the screen, okay?
Okay. I know, honey. Come on. I know. Go ahead, ma'am.
Where is the gun? Is it with her, or is it just...
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor inside the door. My door's locked, so in case he isn't, he can't get up. I'm also armed if he does come over and try to harm her, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
I'm kind of concerned with her mother and the little girl might get back there and find this whatever happened. Don't go out there, honey. Come on. I know. Come on, sit down. Sit down. I know.
Yeah.
All
right, I just want you guys to stay on the phone with me, okay?
No, I'm right here with you. I'm just with her. I'm trying to comfort her. We're in the house. Well, the police are going to want to know, probably. I know, baby. You got to sit down. Come on. There's no... Well, honey, they want you to stay here. If he isn't, we can't take a chance. That's why I want them before we get back in the park.
Deputies are moving as fast as they can. They're coming priority. They're coming lights and sirens. They just want to get and make sure everything's okay. I want to... So where in the house is he?
Where in the house is he? Her bedroom. No, I don't know where that is. So it's one of the bedrooms. It's a lot like mine, so I'm going to assume when you go into the... Is the garage door open? When you go into the garage, it's going to be on the left? Yeah, on the left.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'm just getting that typed up, okay?
What, ma'am?
I'm just getting everything on the screen, okay?
Okay.
I should have Deputy pulling up here soon. Do you see him?
No, I'm in the back now looking out. I know which way the park is in Central Park here.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Okay, the sheriff's here. Thank heavens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you
The
want...
sheriff's car just pulled.
Yeah,
What do you want us to do?
I'm going to stay on the line with you until the deputy gets with you, okay?
Okay. Okay, the sheriff is here. I'm not too sure where they're going.
I'm just staying on the line with you. The deputy's...
I'm right here. I haven't left yet.
Yeah.
I just see it's a SUV sitting out there in front of my neighbor's house, right in front of my house. Just to calm, you know, they're going to take you into custody. You know that, right? Okay, just you know, you just calm down and just calm. Okay. I know.
Okay. You just let me know when they come knock on your door, okay?
Are they coming now, the police?
They will. They're waiting for a little bit of additional units. They want to have everything.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they're, okay, we got to get a hold of, don't go out. Until this police officer comes in here.
They're going to let me know what they want me to tell you, okay? They're just waiting to make sure that they have other people with them. They don't want anything to get out of hand without having proper backup, you know?
Yeah. Well, like I said, the weapon's here. Mm-hmm. I just want them to know that and exactly where it's just sitting right inside the door. It's on the floor. And I did reach out when she ran in and picked it up off my front patio and brought it in. I wasn't going to leave it outside. Mm-hmm. Here's another police officer.
Is it just inside the front door or the back door?
Say that again?
Is it just inside the front door or like the back door patio area?
I'm by the front door. She came in the front. I'm sitting here staring at an officer right now. Okay. Looks like he's talking to one of the other cars. Neither one of them are moving.
Yeah. I'll let you know when it's time, when to come out, okay?
Okay. Hey, is that your weapon or his? Okay. Okay. Let me get my shit. Okay, just calm down, huh?
Okay. Now, the deputies want her to go outside with their hands up, nothing in them. Okay?
You want her to go out?
Yes. They want her to come out with not
out of my house?
Yes.
Does he know she's in my house?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, so we're going to have to go out, okay?
And they want you to stay inside.
Now, let's put your hands where you can see him, okay? All right? Where's she at?
Just start walking out front. They're outside.
I don't see him anywhere. He's sure this is her.
Just start walking out. They're not going to do anything. They just want to make sure that everything's safe and that they're safe, okay?
Can I take her out? She's really upset.
No, they want you to stay inside. It says female
Can you
only.
stay inside on your hand? I don't see it now. Are they at the right house?
We told them multiple times what house to be at.
Yeah, 11327. I'm right in front of that SUV that does not have its lights. Hold up right there, honey. Where are they at? There's a police officer over on the, with the flashing. Okay, one of them sees you now.
Yeah, just keep her walking out, okay?
Honey, do they see you?
They're probably giving her instructions, okay?
Okay. Now I need a police officer to come and get this weapon.
Yeah, they're going to come and get the weapon. They just wanted to make
Okay,
sure.
here they come now. Oh.
All right, folks, just hand those transcripts back down to the deputy. You may resume your question.
At any time during this interaction with Ashley, did she appear to have any injuries?
No,
Okay. Did you see any blood on her?
no,
Okay. Did she complain of any injuries?
no,
Okay. How about her clothing? Did you notice, was her clothing ripped or anything wrong with her clothing?
not that I noticed, no.
Okay. And eventually, did the police come to your house?
And talk to me?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Okay. And did they recover that firearm that she had brought over that you left?
They did it while I was outside, because when I went back in, it was gone.
Okay.
I assumed they took it.
Okay. So maybe you didn't see them take it, but
No.
it was gone.
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions. The defense may have some questions for you.
Okay.
Cross.
Afternoon, Mr. Sant.
Afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you for coming this afternoon. With court's permission, may I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Sant, I've passed you a photograph. I'm going to mark it for identification as fence exhibit number 1, if I can.
Mr. Sant?
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to keep startling you. I apologize.
That's okay.
Can I please have that transcript? No, the transcript. Thank you, sir.
There you go. Thank you.
Mr. Sant, can you identify that?
Well, it looks like my house and Alicia's house at the time.
Yes, sir. And they lived in the house right next door to you, I believe you said.
The one with the red dot on it.
Yes. It was the corner house, correct?
Yes, right,
And it's got a red dot on it?
right.
All right. Is it an accurate representation of your house in comparison and in position to where Miss Benefield lived?
Yeah,
Would you do me the favor, may I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Would you put a check mark on the roof of your house?
my house.
Yes.
All right.
Your house that's depicted in that picture. Okay, we're going to help the jury see how this took place. Can we put it on the overhead? Your Honor?
Absolutely. Madam Clerk, can you dim some lights for us? Just the jury and the presentation about it. Is this just a demonstrative aid?
Yes, sir. Okay, so, Mr. Sant, just if I may turn your attention, if you could.
This one or this?
Actually, I think maybe you'll be able to see it better on this one.
Probably.
You see the one with the red dot on it?
Yes,
That's Ashley's house,
yes,
and your house is immediately to the left, correct?
yes.
All right, thank you.
Don't move that mouse.
I'd like to move that into evidence, Your Honor, as defense exhibit number 1 at this point.
Okay. I just asked a minute ago if it was a demonstrative aid or if you were admitting it.
Well, it was a demonstrative aid up until Mr.
So
Sant.
okay, admit things first if you want. Any objection?
And Judge, I recognize it's the state's case, but I have no objection to this exhibit.
All right, received.
Mr. Sant, you've told us that on this terrible occasion, Ashley was terrified.
Yes,
I think you said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I think you said she was stuttering and shaking.
yes,
Pretty hysterical.
yeah, yes,
All right, now, Mr. Sant, you're pretty familiar with firearms, are you?
somewhat. I use them. I go to firing ranges now. I'm no expert, but I,
Was there anything about that firearm on that day that you noticed that was unusual?
first thing I noticed is when I saw it, there was a spent cartridge stuck between the slide and the entrance to the chamber.
A spent cartridge, meaning the fired cartridge?
I'm sorry, yes, it was empty.
Okay, and it was stuck where?
It was stuck with between the slide, front end of the slide and the back end of the chamber entrance.
The slide on the gun that
Right.
cocks it and loads another bullet into the chamber?
Correct.
So could we agree that the weapon was jammed?
The weapon had been misfired or mishandled. It
Okay.
wasn't held far, and it didn't eject it far
Yeah.
enough.
Now, What is that indicative of, that a cartridge would be stuck like that?
Objection foundation.
I'm going to sustain.
Mr. Sant, do you have experience to the extent of being familiar with weapons and what would cause a cartridge to get stuck in the manner that it was on this gun on that day?
Yes.
May I, Your Honor?
Do you want to be heard?
No.
Go ahead.
Thank you. What is that indicative of, Mr. Sant?
In my experience, was the weapon wasn't held properly when that particular cartridge was fired.
And when you say by held properly, meaning held too loosely?
Yes.
No further questions.
Direct.
No.
Can this witness be released?
Yes.
Yes. Right. Mr. Sant?
Yes.
You are released from your subpoena. You are free to go.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Deputy Thomas Baurle, Baurle.
Burley, I said it wrong. I apologize.
That's okay.
And how are you employed?
Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been so employed?
Going on 23 years.
And what are your current duties with the Sheriff's Office?
Patrol.
And what are your daily duties as a patrol deputy?
Patrolling my zone, which is Lakewood Ranch currently, and taking calls for service.
And back in September of 2020, were you in the same position?
Yes, ma'am.
And would your duties have been the same?
Yes, ma'am.
And to become a law enforcement officer many moon ago, what kind of training or education did you obtain?
It'd be a law enforcement academy here in Manatee County.
And then since then, do you continue to have courses that are offered through the Sheriff's Office that you can take if you'd like?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I want to draw your attention to September 27th, 2020. Do you recall if you were working days or nights then?
I was working second shift, which would be 3 p.m. to 3 a.m.
And you said your zone now is in Lakewood Ranch.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Our counties, the sheriff divides the whole county up into zones.
Correct.
Okay. And what zone is that you're in now?
My zone is North 80, which is Lakewood Ranch, which covers from State Road 70 to University Parkway, from I-75 to Lorraine Road.
And so on September 27th of 2020, what zone were you in if it was something
North
else?
80.
North 80.
Yes, ma'am.
And during your shift that day, did you respond to 11327 White Rock Terrace?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the nature of the call?
It came out originally as a 911 call that a female had come to the neighbor's house and she had a gun with her.
And when you hear a call such as that, does it affect how you respond to the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And how does it do that?
It's dependent on the situation. Sometimes it's priority lights and sirens. Sometimes it's a normal response.
And how about once you arrive at the scene, does it affect how you would react when you got to the scene?
Yes, ma'am. Per protocol, we park a minimum a few houses away from the actual caller's address.
And is that based on the fact that there was a firearm?
Correct.
Thank you. And did you do that in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know how long it took you to arrive since you were in your same zone? If you had to guess.
That's an adjacent. That's North 70. It's
Oh,
an
I'm
adjacent
sorry.
zone. I would guess probably 15 minutes.
And I think I didn't ask the right questions earlier. You were in zone North 80 then?
Correct.
Where was this call?
North 70.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I messed that up. And when you arrived, what did you do?
Again, per protocol, I parked a few houses away. I'd observed a vehicle parked on the opposite side of the street directly across from the 911 caller's residence. So I took up a position behind that vehicle because I was the only deputy on scene at the time. I was waiting there behind the vehicle for additional deputies to arrive on scene.
And did they arrive?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long were you there, you think, by yourself?
With a minute, maybe.
And once the additional deputies arrive, what happens?
The second deputy arrived was Deputy Vreeland, which that was his zone. Dispatch still had the 911 caller on the phone. So we had the Deputy Vreeland told dispatch to have the 911 caller tell the female to come out with her hands up.
And did she do that?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
And were you able to observe her at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you make any observations about her person?
Just she was visibly upset.
And did you see any injuries?
Not that I observed, no.
And did you notice anything about her clothes? Was it ripped or?
No, ma'am. She was wearing a sports bra, shorts, and sneakers.
And they seem to be intact?
Seemed to be intact, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Was she saying anything when she exited the home?
No, ma'am.
What happened to her once she exited?
Deputy Vreeland proceeded forward to the middle of the road and placed her into handcuffs. And being as my car was the closest, we brought her to my car, placed her in the back seat of my car.
And why would...
Can we approach for a moment?
Yes.
And I think I was asking you why she was placed in cuffs and put in the police car.
Due to the circumstances and officer safety.
Thank you, sir. And at that time, actually, strike that. What was the next thing you did?
Other deputies were arriving on scene, so I yelled to any deputies that were there multiple, to watch Miss Benefield in the back of my car, while myself, Deputy Vreeland, and I believe it was Detective Jones, proceeded to the house to clear the residence.
And would that have been that house next door to the 911 callers?
Correct. Directly next
And
door.
thank you. And did you enter that home?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you enter the home?
Through the front door.
Did you notice anything outside The house?
Yes, ma'am. There's a large moving van. I believe it was a U-Haul in the driveway, and the garage door was open. Looked like they were moving stuff.
The big door?
Yes,
Was up? Okay. And when you went in through the front door, were you the first person or was Deputy Vreeland in front of you?
Deputy Vreeland was first. I was second, and Detective Jones was third.
And was the door locked, if you know?
No.
And what happened once you got inside?
As we entered the house, I observed the first bedroom to the left. I observed just a pair of legs, basically just above the knee down. Deputy Vreeland immediately took that room to check it. Myself and Detective Jones proceeded through the rest of the house to clear the rest of the house.
And what are you doing when you clear a house?
Making sure there's nobody else in there that could be hurt or injured or any threats.
And did you find anyone else in the home other than the set of legs that you left with Deputy Vreeland?
No, ma'am.
And did you ever go back into that bedroom?
No, ma'am.
And did you remain in the residence?
No, ma'am.
Where did you go?
Myself and Detective Jones immediately left the residence, and I went straight to my patrol car and proceeded to get inside my patrol car to sit with Miss Benefield.
Your Honor, can I have just a second?
Yes.
At some point, did you ask, was EMS on scene when you were on scene?
There was so much going on. I don't know if they had arrived while we were in clearing the house or they arrived right after. I'm not sure exactly when they arrived.
Okay, but at some point they were there?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ask them to check Miss Benefield to make sure
Yes,
she was
ma'am.
okay? And did she require any medical treatment?
No.
What was the next thing that you did?
Sat in my car with Miss Benefield and waited till I was directed what to do.
And were you eventually given some direction?
Yes, I was advised to transport her down to the main sheriff's office in Bradenton for interviews with
And that's
detectives.
the one by the mall?
Yes, ma'am.
And once you got there, how long is that ride?
20 to 30 minutes.
Once you got there, what did you do?
Once upon my arrival, escorted Miss Benefield up to the entrance where I believe it was Detective Justin Warren was there, and I believe one of Miss Benefield's attorneys was there as well.
And did you conduct any further investigation in this
No,
case?
ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions for the defense. Any more questions?
Cross?
Yes, sir. Afternoon, Deputy.
Good afternoon, sir.
A few questions. If you don't understand any of my questions, please just ask me to repeat them.
Yes, sir.
I think you told us Miss Benefield's condition emotionally on that day when you saw her was she was hysterical.
Visibly upset.
In distinguishing between visibly upset and hysterical, can we agree that you felt she may have been in shock?
I honestly wouldn't know. I just observed her to be visibly upset and crying. I didn't see any hysteria or anything like that involved.
Okay, you're basically like any deputy trained in basic first aid, no?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so you would recognize shock if you saw it?
Possibly.
All right. Do you recall giving a deposition in this case, Deputy Baurle, on August 20th, 2021?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Sure. I have a copy as well.
If that refreshes your recollection at all.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even recall everything I said in the deposition due to the time frame.
And in seeing it now, does it help refresh your recollection?
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, on that particular day, did you think she may have been in shock?
According to my deposition, yes.
May I approach you on?
Yes.
Thank you. You told us that when she was initially placed in your squad car, she had on a sports bra.
That's what I would say it was, yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. My question runs to whether or not at some point following that, a request was made and a deputy brought a cover shirt for Miss Benefield to wear.
I don't recall a request being made. I just recall Deputy Vreeland bringing out a shirt and pair of shoes. I don't know who made that request.
She put the shirt on.
I believe so, yes.
I want to ask you for a minute about report writing. Did you write a report that reflects your participation in this particular case?
I did a supplemental report, yes, sir.
Okay, that's pretty routine for deputies, is it not?
Yes, sir.
In fact, Deputy Baurle, would it be a fair statement to say that in Police Academy, they actually train you in report writing and how important it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that would be because, can you even give us an estimation of how many calls you might respond to in a month?
It'd be very hard.
Okay. And by documenting significant things in your report, you don't have to rely on your memory 8 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road.
Most of the time, yeah, as with any call, sometimes you remember things after the fact.
Of course. So I want to ask you if you independently recall on May 7th, 2018, responding to a call involving a suspicious person in the driveway of Miss Benefield's home. That would have been right next door to the home that she came walking out of.
I have no recollection of that, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Let me pass this to you, Deputy Baurle, see if it refreshes your recollection. Feel free to peruse it.
I don't recall this one, sir.
Is that your name?
It's got my name on it,
Okay.
but I don't recall it.
You don't doubt that it's
No, I don't doubt it's mine.
report that was authored by you?
You know, sometimes the system gets mixed up, our electronic report writing system.
Yeah.
Still happens today. Sometimes you go to write a report and somebody else's, another deputy's name inadvertently ends up as a primary on that. If you don't catch it, it stays that way.
Yeah. At least as we sit here now, you don't have any reason to suspect that's the case, as opposed to it being clear.
Possible.
Let me finish.
Okay.
As opposed to it being an earlier report that you compiled that you just don't have any memory of this far forward.
It's possible.
Okay. So, with the court's permission, if that memorializes your perception of that call on that day, I want to ask you a couple of questions, if I may.
Again, I don't recall this, so I think I can answer questions related to it.
Deputy, when you respond to a call and you fill out a incident or investigation report, among other information that you enter routinely into those reports is the identity of the reporting officer, no?
No. Again, as I previously stated, if you're one of the responding deputies, sometimes that was an old system. We're on a new system, still does the same thing. Sometimes it can inadvertently put one of the other deputies on there as the primary. So if you don't catch it, the report goes through with that other deputy's name on it. So it's all electronic.
Now, that's 2 times you've explained that.
Mm-hmm.
So are you telling us that that is the standard practice, that dispatch makes a mistake
It's
and
not dispatch,
deputies
sir.
don't catch it?
It's not dispatch. It's
It
a
would be
mistake.
the exception. Could we agree?
It can happen. And It does
Okay.
happen. Yes.
So now, let me ask my question to you again.
Okay.
Among the other information that goes into an incident report, does it identify the deputy who is making the report?
Usually, yes.
All right. Does this identify the deputy that was making the report?
It identifies me.
Now, what I would like to ask you, Deputy Baurle, is who the complainant was. That's another piece of information that's inserted in a report, is it not?
Correct.
Okay, and the nature of the complaint as well.
Correct.
Okay, so let me,
Sustained.
what was the objection, Your Honor? I'm sorry.
Lack of foundation.
Does this report that you've seen include the information that we just discussed, the nature of the call and who the complainant was?
Yes.
Now, without leaving it to you.
Okay, if you could approach, please.
In the usual course of events, Deputy Baurle, when you enter information into an incident report, is it fresh in your mind?
Say that again, sorry.
In the usual course of events, when you fill out an incident report, is the information fresh in your mind?
Usually, yes.
Okay. And while it's fresh in your mind, you place it into the report as to such things as the date and the time and the location, the name of the complainant and the nature of the call.
Correct.
All right. Now, I think you've told us that sometimes mistakes are made in these reports and they're attributed to different deputies.
Correct.
I think you also told us that that's the exception rather than the rule.
Correct.
Do you have any reason to believe that this particular report is that exception or not? Do you have any information that leads you?
Again, I don't recall that particular call you're speaking of with that paper, but it's most likely was me.
Okay. Now, may I proceed, Your Honor?
Sustained.
Thank you. Would you tell us, Deputy Baurle, who the complainant was for that call?
Ashley Benefield.
Would you tell us what the date of the complaint was?
May 7th, 2018.
And would you tell us what the nature of the call was?
According to the narrative here,
Don't read the narrative, just tell us the nature of the
I
call.
have to read through the narrative to be able to tell you because I don't recall this.
You got to take that up with Judge White.
What's been allowed is not detailed, just a
Correct, yeah.
general description.
Yes, sir. I understand. Yeah.
Okay, and the nature of the call?
A person in their driveway suspected to be Douglas Benefield.
And that was at what address?
That would be 11331 White Rock Terrace.
And what was the time of the call?
21:54 hours, so that would be 9:54 p.m.
Nighttime.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I have another report, but we have an objection. So, Deputy Baurle, I have one other question for you about one of your calls. Apparently, you cover a lot of ground.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you if you recall, and now this is going back to 2019, specifically December 8th, 2019. You obviously worked the night shift at 2055. Suspicious person call in progress at 11332 White Rock Terrace in Bradenton. You recall that?
No, sir.
Thanks very much, Deputy.
Redirect?
Yes, Judge. I don't have anything, Judge. Thank you.
All right, can this witness be released?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
John Jones, Jones.
And how are you employed?
I'm a detective with Manatee County Sheriff's Office
And how long have you been so employed?
since September of 2014.
And what are your current duties at the Sheriff's Office?
I am a property detective currently.
And does that mean you investigate property crimes?
Yes,
Okay. And back in September of 2020, were you in that same unit or a different unit?
different unit.
And what was that unit?
The Violent Crimes Task Force.
And what are your primary duties as a member of the Violent Crimes Task Force?
Investigate violent or aggravated circumstance, respond to same.
And when you, what kind of education did you obtain to become a law enforcement officer?
Went through the basic law enforcement academy in Valencia and Orlando.
And since then, have you continued to take classes through the Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And do you take some on providing first responder aid as a first responder?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to draw your attention to September 27th, 2020. As a member of ECTF at the time, did you work a specific shift?
I worked 3 p.m. to 3 a.m.
And was that the correct, or is that the shift you were working at that time?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, I got distracted. And did you work, does VCTF have a zone, or are they in the whole county?
They're a countywide task force.
And during your shift on the 27th of September 2020, did you respond to a call on White Rock Terrace?
Yes, I did.
And is that here in Manatee County?
It is.
And how did you find out about this call?
It was dispatched over the radio.
And what was the nature of the call?
Shooting with injuries, I do believe.
And does the nature of the call affect how you respond?
It does.
And how did you respond to this call?
Lights and sirens activated.
And is that because of the fact that there was a shooting?
Yes.
Do you remember how long it took you to get over to White Rock Terrace?
Not very long.
Where you were close in the area?
I was at State Road 64 in Lakewood Ranch Boulevard when it came out.
And what kind of area is this where this home is?
Residential.
Like a subdivision?
Subdivision, yes.
And when you arrived, were other law enforcement officers already on scene?
Yes.
Several or just a few?
A few.
And what did you do when you first arrived?
I was asked to ensure nobody come out of the back of the residence.
And
Nobody came out of the back of the residence.
okay. And after that, what did you do?
I went to the front of the residence to clear the house to ensure there was no person inside the house.
And was that the same house, or was the back of the residence the neighboring house?
Back of the residence was the neighboring house.
So you started at the back of the house next door to the one where you eventually entered?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you went over to the neighboring house. Did you notice anything about the outside?
Can't recall.
That's fine. And do you recall how you entered that house?
Yes, through the front door of the residence.
And what was the purpose for going in there?
To ensure that there was no person inside that was armed and to render aid to anybody inside.
And did you find anyone inside the home?
I did.
And who was it? Or was it a man or a woman?
It was a man.
And where was he?
He was in a bedroom.
And was he standing up or?
No, he was lying down.
And can you kind of describe what you observed in that bedroom?
Yes, I observed a male laying down on the floor, sort of in the middle of the floor. He had a gunshot wound to his right about here, and then another one down by his leg. There was blood under his right leg.
And was this room set up with a bed and a dresser and all those things, or did it look different?
It looked like it was empty.
And based on that room and the other rooms, did it appear someone was either moving in or out of that home?
Yes, it did.
And you've told us you observed what you believe to be gunshot wounds. Did you make any other observations of him?
Yes, he was wearing gray shorts and a gray shirt, or a dark colored shirt.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been pre-marked as states 2 and 3. You take a look and tell me if you recognize those items.
Yes.
How do you recognize them?
This is the shirt that the defendant or a victim was wearing.
And that's states 2, and as to states 3.
These are the shorts the victim was wearing.
And other than having been repackaged for trial, do they appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition when you saw them?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time the state would ask to enter and publish states 2 and 3.
No objection.
Received?
And check, I'm just going to hold this up. This is states 2. This is the shirt the victim you found was wearing.
Yes.
And it appears to have been cut. Do you know how that happened?
Yes, I cut it.
And what was the purpose of cutting it?
To check for injuries.
And then this is states 3. These are the shorts that he was wearing?
Yes.
Okay. And they're also cut. Did you do that?
I did not.
Do you know how that would have occurred?
Likely by emergency medical services.
Is that normal for EMS to have to remove clothing like you did the shirt?
Yes.
As to these shorts in states 3, can you look at them and tell me what the size is?
Men's 30.
Thank you. And as to the shirt in states 2, can you look at that and tell me what the size is?
My glasses. Hold on a minute. Size small.
Thank you, sir.
Other than cutting his shirt, well, let me ask you this first. Did you touch him?
I did.
And how did he feel?
He was cool to the touch.
And did you attempt to provide medical aid?
I did.
And how so?
Again, packing wounds to initiate CPR before EMS arrived on scene.
And what does that mean, packing wounds?
Putting gauze over wounds to keep whatever's inside when you're doing compressions.
And did you eventually start CPR?
No.
And why not?
EMS arrived on scene.
And were they very far behind you when you arrived?
Not very far, but I can't remember exactly how long.
And while you were attempting to provide medical aid, was somebody else taking some photos of the scene as you found it?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you states 18, 19, and 20. Will you take a look and tell me if you recognize those photos?
18 is me checking for the pulse on the victim.
Just take a look at them real quick and tell me if you recognize them first.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
and are those photos that we just discussed that were taken while you attempted to do aid?
Yes.
And do they appear to fairly and accurately depict the scene as you recall it from September 27th, 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would ask to enter states 18, 19, and 20 and publish the same.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Of course.
No objection.
States 18, 19, and 20 will be received. Publish, you mean up here?
Yes, sir. Detective, I'm going to show you right. Let me give you this in case you need it. It's a pointer. I'm going to show you states 18 and ask you to describe what is depicted in 18.
That is me checking the victim for a pulse after the AED has been placed.
And that's you on the right. That's your head.
Yes, sir.
And on the left, is that another deputy?
Yes, it is.
And you said after placing the AED, what is that?
It's a defibrillator.
And is that the stickers we see on his body? Yes. Thank you. And I'm going to show you states 19.
States 19.
Yes. Is this the victim as you found him?
Yes, it is.
And those are the shorts we just saw.
Yes.
Thank you. And then states 20. Is this the position you found when you found him? Is this the same position he was in?
Yes.
Okay. And in the right top right of this picture, there appears to be something tan. Do you know what that is?
Here that it's a mattress stood up against the wall.
Thank you. Thank you, Detective. Did you make any other observations of evidence in that bedroom?
Yes.
Okay. And what was that?
There were 4 spent shell casings and 1 projectile.
And a projectile, is that what I might call a bullet?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see anything, did you do anything else in the house after EMS took over aid?
No, we exited the residence and it was secured pending a search warrant.
And did you conduct any other investigation in this case?
No, I did not.
Judge, can I have just a moment?
Of course.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Detective.
Cross?
Brief questions. Deputy Jones, afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
You were not, or you were, the first deputy that made contact with Mr. Benefield.
I was one of the first. I could tell you I was the first, but I was one of the first in the house, yes.
Were any other deputies in contact with Mr. Benefield prior to yourself?
Not to my knowledge, no.
All right. Had Mr. Benefield been moved at any time?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you ever witness anyone moving him?
Yes.
Other deputies?
EMS.
And the EMS? EMS?
Just EMS.
Just EMS? No other deputies?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And EMS, correct me if I'm wrong, did they drag him out of the room?
I believe so, yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Tyler James Ackerman, Ackerman.
And by whom are you employed?
I work for the Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you worked for the Sheriff's Office?
Just about 9.5 years.
And what are your current duties with the Sheriff's Office?
Currently, I'm a violent crimes task force detective.
And were those the same duties you had in September of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And what are your daily activities as a violent crimes task force detective?
What area?
What do you do?
Oh, okay. So we'll go out to assist patrol with calls for service pertaining to shootings, stabbings, robberies, stuff of that nature, and then we'll also assist other detectives with investigations.
Thank you. And what kind of training did you obtain to become a law enforcement officer?
Prior to becoming a law enforcement officer, I went to Police Academy, which was a full term for 6 months, and then after that, there's additional training that we receive at the agency to include in-service training, about a 3-month program that'll get us ready for the road, and then a 3.5-month program on the road to be able to pass to become a solo deputy.
And does that training in the academy and going forward involve firearms?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do before you were a law enforcement officer?
Prior to law enforcement, before I went back to school to become a police officer, I was in the United States Army.
And when you were in the Army?
I was in the United States Army, sir.
And when you were in the Army, did you also receive firearms training?
Yes.
And when you were in the Army, were you in a position where you carried a gun regularly?
Yes, I was an infantryman. That was my job.
And as a law enforcement officer, do you, and a member of VCTF, do you carry a gun every day?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you, are you required to go out to the range and make sure you know how guns operate?
Correct. We're required annually to pass a test, but then we're also given the opportunity to go out to the range to practice and do more because it takes more than shooting once a year to be proficient.
And do you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to ask you a little bit about September 27th, 2020. As a member of VCTF, were you working a specific shift?
Yes, ma'am. We work 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. That's our standard shift, unless something else that's happening in the county dictates that we change it.
And do you work in a specific area?
We have the entire county as our jurisdiction.
And during your shift that night, did you respond to a White Rock Terrace?
Yes, ma'am.
And how were you informed of this call?
I believe it was through the radio. There was a shooting that was dispatched, and I can tell you exactly how many of the members of my team, but we were together on a meal break.
And how long did it take you to get over there, if you recall?
I couldn't give an exact time frame, but maybe about 10, 15 minutes. I'm not 100% sure.
When you arrived, what did you observe going on?
When I first got to the scene, there was an ambulance that was parked in front of, I believe, the incident location, and there was a stretcher that was being loaded into the back of the ambulance where there was a male that I visually observed on the stretcher.
And did you see a female?
Yes, there was a female that was being placed in the back of a marked patrol car, I believe, but I saw her for seconds, and she was placed inside the vehicle.
And were there a lot of law enforcement on scene?
Yes.
And what, if anything, were you tasked with doing?
Initially, when we get to a scene, we wait to see what needs to continue to be investigated or what people need help with. And there was information that said that the defendant went to the neighbor's house after the incident that took place. So myself, Detective Din, and I believe somebody from patrol went to that residence to make contact with the neighbor.
And what was your purpose of making contact?
To come have an interview completed with the neighbor to see what he knew happened.
And that home, and I apologize if you just said it, is directly next door.
Correct. If you're looking at the front of the incident location, it's the first house immediately to the left.
And what happened when you got over there?
When we went over there, Detective Din completed the interview with the neighbor, and then after the interview, we collected a multi-waiver for the house.
And what is that?
Multi-waiver is a form that's two-sided, and it has multiple different agreements that we can have. So if we go to a scene, for this particular case, the multi-waiver is something that we collect from the person to get consent to enter and search their house with their permission in lieu of having a search warrant written sent to a judge.
And was Mr. Sant okay with you entering his house?
Yeah, I believe so, yes. I believe he signed it, but I have not seen the multi-waiver in 4 years. So.
Okay. And were you listening in on the interview, and I don't want you to tell me what was said between Detective Din and Mr. Sant?
I was there for a portion of the interview, but not the entire thing.
Was something that you heard in the interview, did it cause you to go do something else?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what was that?
To collect a firearm that was inside the residence.
Okay. And did you enter Mr. Sant's home?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you locate the firearm?
Yes.
And where was it?
If you were looking at the front door, as soon as the front door opens, immediately to your left on the ground was the firearm, and it was just below a window that was next to the door.
And what, if any, observations did you make about the firearm?
Initially, the first observation was that there was a magazine inside the firearm, appeared to be a semi-automatic black pistol, and the slide, which is the portion of the top of the pistol that retracts to unload a round after it's fired and then load a new round, was partially it wasn't completely seated in the forward position. There's a very small amount of it that was to the back.
And did you examine the gun on scene to determine why it was like that?
Yes.
And what did you see?
I saw that the firearm, you could see a little bit of ammunition or a round of ammunition inside the chamber. But then after that, that was the only observation I could see with it on the ground.
And did it appear, and was that a live round?
When I cleared the ammunition that was inside the chamber was an unfired live round that was still able to be fired or appeared to be able to be fired.
And I guess I should ask you, once you find a firearm, what do you do with it?
Generally, the first task is to make it safe, clear the firearm.
And so what does that mean?
So it would be pointed in a safe direction. The magazine is always the first thing to be removed from the firearm. So if you pull the slide to the rear and the magazine is still inside the firearm, one round will eject, but it will subsequently load another round into the chamber, which would make it still a live weapon.
And so did you remove the magazine?
Yeah, the magazine was removed first, and then after that, the slide was locked to the rear to prevent the slide from going forward. And when the slide was pulled to the rear, that's when the live round of ammunition was ejected out of the chamber.
Thank you. And at some point, did you take a photograph of the firearm?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been pre-marked as State 17. Will you take a look and tell me if you recognize that photo?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
That's the firearm that I photographed and collected.
And does that photograph appear to accurately depict the firearm?
Yes.
On that day? Your Honor, the state would ask to enter and publish State 17.
Let's talk about your figures.
Mr. Taylor, is there any objection to the admission of State 17?
No, sir.
Received.
And Your Honor, once I'm done, could I just have it passed?
Okay.
Thank you. Once you made the firearm safe, what'd you do with it?
After that, it was placed in a new property bag.
And then did you take it to property and evidence yourself?
No, ma'am.
And what'd you do with it?
I waited with the firearm until CST, I believe it was CST Conlon, arrived to the neighbor's house and took custody of the firearm.
And a CST, what is that?
Crime scene technician.
And were you asked to conduct any further investigation in this case? I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Detective.
Thank you.
All right, if we could go ahead and publish State 17. Mr. Taylor, hold on one second. They're publishing State 17.
Thank you.
May I see a copy of it?
Of course. You can see the actual exhibit. All right, cross-exam.
Afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, sir.
I think we can agree that your testimony pretty much revolved around the firearm.
Yes, sir.
You have experience with firearms.
Yes, sir.
There's various reasons why a handgun such as this might jam, correct?
Might jam, but what was with the firearm was not consistent with a jam, sir.
Okay.
The firearm was just slightly out of battery, which means that the slide was not locked to the rear.
And that's the exclusive reason for it to have been in the condition that it was, you think?
There's multiple reasons why the slide wouldn't go to the complete forward position.
That's what I
But
want.
what was with the firearm was not what would be consistent with a jam. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so let's concentrate on the slide.
Yes, sir.
Are there various reasons why the slide would have been in that position?
Yes.
Is one of those reasons, Detective, someone who is not holding the gun firmly enough?
One of them can be if the way that the firearm reacts with recoil, especially with a pistol, is when the firearm is shot, it has to be firmly held in place for the slide to actually be able to use its own force to push back and eject around a load new one, sir.
Okay, and as a relative expert with firearms, you go to the range regularly, I would assume?
Pretty decently, sir.
All right, and you make certain when you fire a pistol that you are holding it firmly enough so that that doesn't happen?
I do, yes.
Okay, that comes with practice,
Yes,
and that comes with knowledge of the firearms.
I would say so.
So if somebody were a neophyte in the actual firing of the firearm and was scared and petrified, if they weren't holding it tightly enough, that slide could end up in the position that you found it in.
It could, but I think the thing that normally happens more commonly when it comes to a pistol and a grip being weak is that the round is still going to fire, but what happens is that the slide goes backwards, but it doesn't fully eject the round, which causes something that's called a stovepipe. So the best way that I can explain that is that the firearm wants to load a new round of ammunition into the chamber, but the old round has to come out first. So what happens as the chamber is coming back, it actually goes forward, and then the shell casing that it wanted to eject gets stuck in that slide, so it can't go forward anymore.
Okay. And one of the other ways would be, as we discussed,
It could be, yes, sir.
Yeah.
It could be ammunition, a spring, various things.
failure to hold it tightly.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
No, Judge, thank you.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Judge.
Sir? Mr. Taylor? Can the witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes.
All right, sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. 3:15, we're back on the record. State versus Ashley Benefield. State, I don't know, what you planned on. I think you said you had 7 witnesses ready for today. You think we're going to get that far?
We have 2 crime scene techs in the hall. Ms. Dvorack, who is going to be relatively brief, I think, and then Ms. Conlon, who will not be relatively brief. And then I think we have 2 more on standby that are here.
Right, I have Ashley Byers out in the hall and, Alicia Byers and Dr. Barbara Russell. I don't anticipate their testimony is going to be very long at all from the state side, so I was hoping to get them done today if possible, so they don't have to come back.
We'll see how far we get.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have some issues with Byers and with Russell.
Okay, but they're going to be later.
After
Yeah,
the 2 crime scene techs.
Well, let's get through the 2 crime scene techs to guarantee we get through those, and then we'll see where we're at with time, and maybe we get to them today, maybe we don't. We'll do our best, obviously, because I'm with you. I've said before, I prefer to get, if you got witness here, let's get through them. But maybe if we don't get there, that'll give you time to put whatever argument you want on the record. Sure.
It's scheduled for tomorrow. Depending on what happens today, it could be more. They're not available until Thursday morning. He's coming from Jacksonville. So I just wanted to report to know, because I know you were, like, if we got done a little bit early, we're not going to, which I don't think will happen, we're not going to have him until Thursday morning, but then that would be our last witness if we're on schedule.
All right.
Just so that everybody's aware. I don't want to have them try to.
So that's a good update for you, though, because you were saying, hey, because you had somebody who's getting a surgery next week, and
We had somebody getting surgery on the 1st, and we have
people coming in from out of town.
4 out-of-state people. Yeah.
So there you go. The state
Yeah.
is just thinking they're going to finish Thursday, Thursday morning.
If we're on schedule at the end of the day tomorrow, then we'll have 1 witness left.
So just FYI.
Yep.
All right. Are you ready to get the jury back in?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Meghan Dvorack, last name spelled D as in David, V as in Victor, Orack.
And by whom are you employed?
Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been so employed?
12 years.
And what are your current duties with the Sheriff's Office?
I am a crime scene tech.
How long have you been a crime scene technician?
6 years.
And what did you do prior to becoming a crime scene technician?
I was a 911 dispatcher.
And as a crime scene tech, when you changed over from dispatch to crime scene, did you have to go through some training?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell the jury about that?
We do an in-house training. It's usually 3 to 6 months. We have certain criteria that we need to get checked off on by our own training officers as well as the unit manager, and he deems it appropriate when we're able to respond to calls and process evidence on our own.
And were you working as a crime scene tech in September of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you asked, I'm going to draw your attention specifically to September 27th, 2020. Were you asked to assist in a homicide call that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time were you called?
About 20 minutes to 9.
And what were you asked to do?
I was asked to respond to our ID interview area, which is at our main operations center, to meet with detectives and obtain photographs.
And what is CID?
Criminal Investigative Division.
And do you know what time, did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And do you know what time you arrived?
I arrived at approximately 9:21 that evening.
And were you already said, I think, you were asked to take photographs.
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that of?
Ashley Benefield.
And did you do that?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what's the process for taking pictures of someone?
In this circumstance, we take overall photographs of the person as they are when we first see them, taking identification photos from the front of their face, the sides, and then we take photographs in various forms of them being stood fast in front of us. So we just go in clips from the top all the way down. So we do a face shot to her chest, middle area, and then legs, and then down to the feet. And so that's what we did first.
And then once you do that, what's the next thing you do?
The next thing we do, because I was also requested to collect her clothing as items of evidence. And so we will start by removing an item of clothing. We're also checking for further injuries at that time or any marks that need to be identified and photographed. So we started doing that.
May I approach her?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you states 21 through 30. Will you take a look at them and tell me if you recognize them?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize them?
These are the photographs I obtained that evening.
And do they fairly and accurately depict Ms. Benefield as you photographed her on September 27th, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would ask to enter and publish states 21 through 30.
Any objection? None. Will be received.
Thank you. Mr. Dvorack, you have a laser pointer there. You may have to check if it's on.
It's on.
Okay. I'm going to start with states 21. And so if you'll just kind of, for the record, let me tell us what we're seeing in this picture.
Sure. This is a front identification picture, as we call them, of the subject that we're photographing. Just like an ID photo that you would take on your driver's license.
And did you, when you were taking these photos, is that the time in which you're looking for any injuries?
Yes.
And did you observe any injuries on Ms. Benefield's face?
No.
And I'll show you states 22. This is her right side?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And states 23 would be the opposite side, left?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you observe any injuries on either of those sides of her face?
No, ma'am.
And so then you said you kind of just go down the body, front and back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to show you states 24. Will you tell me what we're seeing here?
This is a mid-torso from her breast line down to her pelvic hip area, with obviously her arms crossed in front of her person.
And states 25.
Is her shin, just above her shins, and down to her ankles that are covered by shoes.
Thank you. And states 26.
And this is a rear view of that same photograph.
And did you, when you were taking these photos, did you observe any injuries on her arms or legs?
I believe that I observed some redness on her right forearm and some slight discoloration on the back of her left leg and upper right side of her right area, right thigh.
And so I'm showing you now states 27. Is that what you're are you documenting her, the red mark you saw on her wrist in this photo?
Yes.
And you said at some point, or that you did not observe any injuries to her face or head.
I'll overrule.
Thank you. I believe you just testified that you didn't observe any injuries on her face or head. Is that correct?
I did not see any.
But did you document her left ear?
I did.
And I'm going to show you states 28. Is this her left ear?
Yes, ma'am.
And why did you document her left ear?
Her attorney that was present at that evening with her in the room advised me that she had...
Hearsay.
I think
Is
it's
it offer for the truth?
No, it's effect on the listener.
All right, overruled.
Go ahead.
Her attorney that was in the room advised me that she had seen some redness on the defendant's ear, and so I did take it for posterity reasons, photographs of that ear.
Thank you. And then once you took these overall photos that we just saw and documented those, the scratch on her wrist, did you have her remove her T-shirt?
I did.
And did you observe any injuries once she removed her T-shirt?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
I noticed a scratch, a little vertical scratch under her right breast area, and then more scratches above her right hip.
I'm going to show you states 29. It's been cropped just for modesty purposes, but can you kind of orient us to where this is on Miss Benefield's body?
Looking straight forward at Miss Benefield, this would be just under the right breast area, just under the bra line. And
go ahead. And
right here is the scratch I was referring to.
Thank you. And states 30, are these the scratches you mentioned on her hip.
Yes, so this would be the side of her right hip.
And I'm going to show you the picture. Up there, they kind of look brown, but were they in fact brown?
No, ma'am, they were red.
Thank you. And you said that's her right hip?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Did you observe any other injuries once Ms. Benefield removed her clothing?
No, ma'am.
And did you collect her clothing?
I did.
Did you conduct any further investigation after you documented Ms. Benefield?
No.
Do you have anything else for her? I don't have any further questions, Mr. Dvorack. Defense may.
Cross?
Your Honor, I think that the monitor did not accurately portray two of the photographs. I wonder if the court had any objections before I begin my cross-publishing these two.
Absolutely not. Go ahead. Just hand them to the deputy.
Yes.
Can you state for the record which numbers they were?
It would have been 29 and 30. But
29 and 30. Thank you. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Is it deputy or Ms.?
Crime scene, Dvorack, or Mrs.?
Okay. Are you a licensed deputy or?
No, I'm not a certified. I'm classified as civilian.
Civilian. Okay, that works for the sheriff's department
Yes, sir.
as a crime scene technician.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you, of course, filled out a report of the things that you did on that particular day, did you not?
Yes.
And among other things, as you've explained to us here this afternoon, Ms. Dvorack, you also collected, did you not, DNA swabs?
I did.
Okay, will you tell us what DNA swabs are?
DNA swabs, dependent upon what I'm being requested to swab, are utilized when I'm trying to get a possible DNA sample from an area. In this circumstance, I believe I took, I can just refer to my report,
Please,
Judge?
Absolutely. Take your time. You can refer to your notes. I don't need to speak for the court, but I'm pretty confident on that one.
I did take a buccal swab. We call it a buccal swab standard from the defendant. And then for this particular case, I took touch DNA swabs, which meaning I was swabbing specific areas that the defendant's counsel had advised me that I needed to swab in accordance to find maybe possibly some of Mr. Benefield's DNA. I believe I swabbed several areas in reference to that.
Okay, and would those areas that you swabbed include Ms. Benefield's hands?
I did swab her forearm and wrist areas, both from the left and the right.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think you referred to that as touch DNA?
Yes.
In other words, trying to break this down in its simplest terms, it would indicate when the results came back whether or not a particular individual may have touched Ashley Benefield in those areas that you swabbed.
If she can answer. Overruled.
You may answer.
It is possible, yes.
Okay. And in this instance, by what you just expressed to us, you were taking those touch DNA samples off Ms. Benefield's wrists and forearms to check to see if Douglas Benefield had touched her on that particular day.
I believe it was just to see if any touch DNA profile came back.
Okay, would Douglas Benefield be included in that?
I don't know for certain. I did not send off the swab, so I'm not sure who they were actually putting a profile against or running it against to.
Okay, so you swab it, it's sent off to the lab?
The detective is the one who determines what swabs get sent off and who the DNA comparison is related to.
Okay, and the lab analyzes it and sends it back?
Yes.
And when they send it back, they distinguish what individuals may or may not have left their DNA in the areas that you swabbed?
I can't answer that. I don't know what their results look like or what their job entails.
Well, do you know what the end result of your swabbing is for?
I do not.
Okay, you don't know whether it's to establish if somebody touched them in those areas?
I do swab to see if there is multiple or just one DNA profile in that area. But like I said, I don't know who, if they were sending him off to compare with Mr. Benefield's DNA or not.
I understand. So you don't know who. When you swab, you're swabbing to see whether or not scientifically there's going to be evidence that someone may have touched Ms. Benefield in those areas.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Redirect.
Dvorack, you have your report with you?
I do.
Would you look at the first page where you begin listing the areas that you swabbed?
Yes.
Does it not at the bottom also say that you swabbed the suspect's right hand and left hand?
Yes, it does. I
Not the
apologize. I
suspects.
missed that.
Ms.
Yes.
Benefield's right hand and left hand.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so you did the right hand, the left hand, the right wrist, the left wrist, the right forearm and the left forearm.
Yes, the forearms and wrists were one swab individually on both arms, and then yes, I did swab both her right hand and her left hand individually.
And what do you do with the swabs after you've completed your task?
They are sealed with evidence tape, and they are signed on the seal to ensure that the seal is not broken, and then I place them into our property and evidence division, to which the detective deems that they need to be sent off or not.
Who's the lead detective on this case?
Detective Justin Warren.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Still no.
All right, can the witness be released? State?
Yes.
We have her under subpoena, Your Honor. I'm going to have to ask that you remain under.
All right, ma'am. You're not released from your trial subpoena. The rule of sequestration has been invoked, so you're not to discuss your testimony or the questions asked of you with the attorneys or anyone else, any other witnesses. You're not to talk with any witnesses about their testimony or other evidence. You're not to watch or hear anything about the proceedings until you're released from your subpoena or the jury has been discharged.
Yes, sir.
All right, you can go.
Hello. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
It's Amanda Conlon, Conlon.
And by whom are you employed?
I'm Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been so employed?
20 years.
And have you been, what is your current duties? What are your,
Scene technician.
and have you been a commissioned that whole 20 years?
No.
What did you do before that?
I was in teletype, which is part of dispatch.
And then how long have you been in the crime scene unit?
17 years.
And what kind of training do you get to become a crime scene technician?
I went to St. Pete College and for crime scene specifically.
And then once you join the unit, do you have any on-the-job training?
Yes.
And do you continue to receive trainings if methods change or new science evolves?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to draw your attention to September 27th, were you working that day?
Yes.
And in the same capacity. To a scene at 11331 White Rock Terrace.
Yes.
And what time did you arrive there?
Approximately, I got called at 1937 hours, and I think I arrived about 28 hours approximately.
Okay, so just because I don't math. 37 p.m.?
Yes.
And then you got there at 8:28?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And was law enforcement already on scene?
Yes.
And how do you get called out to a scene?
It's a Sunday night, and I was on call. So since I was the on-call person, Sergeant Moss was the one who actually called me out that night.
And when you arrived there, without telling me what they say, did you speak to law enforcement to get an idea of what?
Yes.
What is your task there on scene at White Rock Terrace?
Once I arrive and wait for the search warrant to arrive, I can only take photographs of the outside of the residence on the street of where the crime scene tape was. And when the search warrant, I was able to enter the residence.
And prior to entering the residence at 11331, did you go next door to the neighbor's house?
Yes.
And why'd you go over there?
There was a firearm that I needed to collect.
And tell me about that. Where was the firearm?
When I arrived, Detective Ackerman was outside the residence with the paper bag.
And was it secured, I guess?
He secured it, yes.
And what type of firearm was it?
Field 45 caliber.
And when you got there, had it already been unloaded? Still?
It was still, the magazine was still loaded.
And it did in fact have bullets in it?
It had chamber and 3 in the magazine.
And what type of ammo was in the firearm, if you recall?
45 caliber and Hornady, I believe.
And once you collect the gun, what do you?
On scene that night, I secured it in my van, locked in my van.
Ms. Conlon, I'm for states 31, 32, and 33. Will you take a look at those and tell me if you recognize them?
Yes, I recognize them.
And how you recognize them?
Those are my photographs that I took of the...
And do they appear to be founded on September 27th, 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would ask to enter 31, 32, and 33. With them.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon, there's a pointer there. I don't think you'll need it, but if you do. I'm going to show you first states 31. What's the purpose of this picture?
That is the next door neighbor's house. So
Firearm that day or that evening?
Yes.
And are those potentially Detective Ackerman's feet there?
Yes.
Okay. Front porch of that same address?
Yes.
And then state.
That's the firearm.
And the slide is back in this firearm in this picture. Was that done by the detective prior to you getting it from him?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon, I left an item there with you. It is states 13. And tell me if you recognize it.
It's the box that I packaged the gun in, and it's got the information on...
Side. It's open.
You packed it back in September of 2020.
Yes.
Your Honor, this time the state would ask to enter in 13.
Received.
Would it be okay if the deputy just walked? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Photos?
Yes. Yeah, I start to take photos into the inside, and I entered through the garage door, which was open. I entered then into a hallway where there was a laundry room on the left side of me, and then as I continued down the hallway, there was 2 bedrooms side, and then there was a bathroom at the very end of this hallway.
And so do you document the entire inside of the house before there's any searches or evidence collected?
Yes.
And is that what you did in this case?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon, I'm going to show you states 34 through 82. It'll take you a minute, but if you'll go through each of those and let me know when you're done. It's laying there. You kind of were describing the layout.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
It's the residence.
And does it depict the portion of the residence we are going to discuss this afternoon?
Yes.
Your Honor, enter states 16 and states 34 through 82.
Any objection? No. They'll all be received.
Thank you, Your Honor. And may I publish?
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. Conlon, sketch, blown it up, assist you in describing the house as we walk through it.
Yes.
And can you take a look at this blow up and tell me if it is an accurate depiction of state 16?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, State, while you continue to test that.
Good morning, everybody. We're back on the record. It's State versus Ashley.
Mr. Taylor, feel free to reposition yourself as you need, clear view of what's going on.
Okay, Ms. Conlon, we're gonna, you have a pointer there. So we're gonna kind of walk through this house, through your pictures and this. Okay. And then you already said you went in through a laundry room. So if you just kind of point to where you walked through.
Here.
Okay. And I'm gonna steal those pictures. I'm gonna start with states 34. What is this picture?
Of the residence.
35.
This is one of the storage pods and the U-Haul.
In the garage.
Correct.
This is states 36. Where are you standing when you take this photo? Sorry.
I'm standing right in the entranceway of the garage.
And then states 37. What do we see here?
Still the garage.
And what is that doorway that's depicted in the middle of states 37?
So that's the hallway, and then once I enter that hallway, the laundry room's right there on the left-hand side.
And states 38, is this laundry room you were just... And then once you go through the laundry room, what's the first thing you encounter?
Past the laundry room, there's a bedroom, which is right here.
And did you enter that bedroom and document it with a photo? On the sketch is labeled child's bedroom.
Yes.
And were there things in this bedroom that potentially a child lived in? Such as?
The mattress, and there were some items in the closet.
Now, after you went in there, where's the...
I'm continuing down the hallway, and there's the second bedroom.
And we're going to come back to that one. Eventually, do you into the living room area?
Yes. So once I get to the end of the hallway, then I start my kitchen.
And this is states 40. What area are we?
You're in the living room right now.
This, we're going to have dueling laser pointers. This here, what door is that?
That's the front door.
Okay. So that's on the right side of the
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then here, is that the same front door on the left side of this picture, states 41?
Yes.
Okay. What are you here?
The dining room.
And then in states 42, where are you standing now when you take states 42?
So I'm standing like right in this area.
Thank you. And did you document the kitchen?
Yes.
And was this a pantry in states 43?
Yes.
Okay, and where is it?
It's right there.
And then this sketch is only the part of the house that we're going to talk about today. Is there something past the kitchen and those bathrooms there?
Yeah, master bedroom and bathroom in this area.
And did you go back and document that room?
I did.
Did you find of evidence in that room?
No, I didn't.
Thank you. Once you've walked through the whole home and you said you had gone into that bedroom we called Miss Benefield's bedroom on the sketch, do you also document any evidence that you find?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to show you states 44. Can you tell us what we're seeing here? And then
So that's blood, and that's the entranceway of this bedroom right here. So it would be going this way.
And just to be clear, the wood part when the tile would be the hallway?
Correct.
Okay. And then, is this the same entranceway from a different angle?
Yes.
Okay. And were you made aware of what that smear was from, or that blood mark?
Yes.
And what was it?
It was from the victim being dragged out to be worked on.
And did it go all the way, did it start in that bedroom?
Yes.
And where did it end?
It ended at the front door.
And it states 46. I think it's a little more clear, but this is the bedroom.
Correct.
Thank you. And then what bedroom is this?
This is, once again, the same bedroom.
And this is 47. And we'll call this Miss Benefield's bedroom if that's okay with you. And so what are we looking at here?
I've started to take my photographs like in a 360 inside the bedroom. So now the blood, that's right there in the middle.
And I'm just gonna, can you just kind of mark it on there? Circle it, I guess. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that states 47. Oh. States 48. What is there some, would you call them bifold doors there?
Yes.
And what is that? And then you said you did a 360 view. Does that mean you take pictures of the whole room?
Yes, corner to corner, as best I can.
Thank you. And this is states 50 documenting here.
Once again, the room, I'm just standing at a different corner.
And after you've gone through these pictures, do you later mark items of evidence in a certain way?
Yes.
And how do you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I will come back and place evidence markers down by anything that I think is evidence.
And did you do that in this room?
I did.
Okay. I'm going to show you states 51. This is the same bedroom. Okay. So what markers do we see here?
You're seeing 1 through 6.
And do you then also kind of zoom in or get closer pictures of what each item you're documenting?
Yes.
And so we'll start with E2. That's the same room we've been seeing, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in states 51, we can see that next to the room is marker number 1.
Yes.
Okay. So it's just kind of hidden in this picture. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm capable, I'm going to try. What are you documenting in state 1?
I'm starting to get close-ups of the casings that are next to them.
Okay. And so at at markers 1, 2, and 3 here in states 52, what are those 3 items?
They're casings.
This computer's killing me. And then in states 50, where are you standing now?
Now my back is towards the wall. So 4 and 6, 5, 4 is in the corner.
And then is that white sticker on the wall a marker also?
Yes.
And states 54 accomplishes what I tried to accomplish a moment ago. These are the closer up pictures of 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
Okay. Collect those 3 casings. I'll show you what's been pre-marked as states 4, 5, and 6. You take a look at those 3 items and tell me if you recognize them.
My seal.
And do they, other than having been repackaged for trial purposes, do states 4, 5, and 6 enter 4, 5, and 6?
Any objection to states 4, 5, and 6? Received?
Now we're at states picture 55. What are you depicting here?
Pardon me.
So there's a casing there, but also a close-up of the blood.
And did you collect that casing?
I did.
State 7. Do you recognize?
My last name, my ID, my seal.
And other than being repackaged, does it appear to be in essentially the same condition as when you packaged it?
It does.
You're asked to enter state 7.
Any objection to states 7?
No, sir.
Received?
Thank you, Your Honor. And Judge, could we just publish by having these casings pass these 4?
You see them?
Yes, sir. You want-
No, I just need to hold them up. Yes, you may pass those.
Thank you.
You got them all, Deputy? All right, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge. To show you states 56, we see 1, 2, and 3, which we've already discussed, but also number 5. What were you documenting with tent number 5?
There's a projectile at 5.
And in states 57, is that a close-up of that projectile?
Yes.
And did you collect it?
Yes.
Take a look at states 9 and tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
And how do you recognize it?
It's my last name, my ID, and my seal.
And other than being repackaged for court purposes, does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected it from marker number 5?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would ask to enter states 9.
Received.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now we're looking back out of the same bedroom, is that correct?
Correct.
This is States 58, and we see a marker we have not seen before in the middle there, well, a couple. But that first one in the hallway,
I'll sustain. She can explain.
thank you. Can you tell me which markers we see in this picture?
So going out into the hallway towards the front door is 13, 14, 15.
And would you point to them if you don't mind with that laser pointer?
Right there, there, and there.
And then on the wall, do we see a marker, or is there any other markers besides number 6 and the ones you just discussed?
Number 7.
Okay. And what were you documenting with number 7?
A projectile hole.
And this is States 59. Is that the same hole?
Yes.
Thank you. And at some point, did you attempt to determine what happened to the projectile after it went through number 7?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to figure that out?
Yes.
And where did it go?
It ended up in the bathroom's door frame.
And do you have some type of equipment that you use to try to help you in that, to figure out the path of a bullet?
A trajectory rod? Yes.
And did you use that in this case?
I did.
Okay. I'm going to show you States 60, and if you could describe for the jury what they're seeing here, please.
So the hole starts at 7 and enters. So that's an entryway. Then this is where it ended up. So the projectile's right there at 11 in the door frame.
Thank you. And did you document the path that it took?
I did.
Okay. So that was State 60, if I didn't state it for the record. This is State 61.
So that would be on the other side of 7. So 7's an entry. 8 is an exit. So that's going into the bathroom cabinet underneath the sink.
And if you can, well, I guess, so 7 would be on the opposite side of the wall?
In the bedroom, correct.
Thank you. Then after it left 8, did you determine where it went?
Its path continued through the cabinet door.
And this is State 62. What do we see here?
So now it is entering cabinet door. So that's what number 9 is labeling.
Thank you. And what's this in States 63?
So that's the same cabinet door, and this is it exiting that cabinet door.
And this is State 64 for perspective. Will you show us, just point to where States, the marker 10 is?
Right there.
10, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, 10.
And did you determine the final resting place of this projectile?
I did.
And where was it?
It's at 11 in the door frame.
So this is State 65. What's this?
That is where the projectile ended up.
And State 66, what do we see here?
That is a close-up, and you can actually see the projectile right there.
And did you dig it out of the wall?
I did.
And State 67, what do we see here?
That is, it's been dug out, so that's just showing that it came out, and it's right there.
And did you collect that projectile?
I did.
How many same questions? Do you recognize it?
I do.
And how do you recognize it?
My last name, my ID, and my seal.
And other than being repackaged for court purposes, does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition as when you removed it from the wall back in September of 2020?
It does.
At this time, the state would ask to enter States 8.
Received?
I'm going to show you State 68. Can you tell me what you're documenting here?
So that is the blood trail. So I'm now in the living room, dining room area. So that's 14, 15, and 16 are all blood.
And we saw a 14, 15, and 16 in a previous picture. Are these the same ones?
Yes.
You only use each number once?
Correct.
Thank you. And this door, what is the door in the middle of this picture?
That's the front door.
And then State 69, what do we see here?
So I continued outside because there was more blood outside. So that is right in the front entrance outside the front door. So it would be right in this area. So that's 17 and 18 with blood.
Thank you. And when you said this area, you pointed, but I didn't see. Would you mind?
Right in this area.
Thank you. Did you locate any other projectiles in the home?
I did.
And where was it? Where was it? One or more?
It was one more, just one more.
And where was it?
It's in the living room.
And did you document that with photos?
I did.
I'm going to show you State 70. What do we see here? And if you could just show us on that sketch where we're looking.
So this is in the living room, and it's right by the front door. So it's gonna. And this is the front door, so it's right here in this area. There's the window, so it's right there.
Thank you. And what is this item in State 71, if you know?
It's not some kind of shelving.
And what are you documenting in this photo?
The path that the projectile took.
And can you just point to the jury what you used?
Right there, there, and there's the projectile hole.
Thank you. And this is State 72. Is this the projectile you just told us about?
It is.
And did you remove it from the wall?
I did.
And you collected it?
I did.
I'll show you States 10. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
My last name, my ID, and my seal.
And does, other than repackaged for trial purposes, does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition?
It does.
Your Honor, the state would ask to enter States 10.
Received?
And may I have the deputy pass 8, 9, and 10, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, State.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Conlon, did you find any firearms in this home?
I did.
And I want to show you States 49. We previously viewed it. What do we see here in 49?
The backpack that's in the closet.
And did you search that backpack?
I did.
And did you document that search?
I did.
And so this is state 73. Is that the same backpack?
Yes.
And what did you find inside that backpack?
A firearm.
Did you find anything to indicate to you whose backpack it was?
There was a driver's license.
This is state 74. Is this the driver's license you found in the backpack?
Yes.
And would you mind telling me the name on it?
Ashley Benefield.
Thank you. And what do we see here in state 75?
That's the firearm.
And then at some point later, once you collected it, did you lay it out and document it?
I did.
I'm going to show you state 76. And let me ask you first, what kind of firearm was it?
It was a 6-hour 380.
And in state 76, is that the same firearm?
Yes.
I can zoom in if you, maybe, to be sure, or give you the other picture. Is that the 6-hour?
It is.
Thank you. And I'm going to show you states 43. We saw this picture. This is in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find anything of evidentiary value in that pantry?
Yes.
Okay. And what was it?
A firearm.
And can we see it here in this picture?
You can't see it, but it's where the Jiffy peanut butter is. There's a basket, and it's in that basket.
And so now, state 77. Is that the same Jiffy or Jif?
Yeah.
Okay. And 78.
The basket's been taken down to a lower shelf, and then the firearm's in there.
And did you also later document this firearm on some brown paper?
I did.
And in state 79, is that what we see?
Yes.
And what kind of firearm was that?
It was a Springfield 9mm.
Thank you. Did you collect, and I'm sorry, let's go back to the SIG that was in the closet. Was it loaded?
It was.
And you said that was a 380?
Oh, yes.
And the one that this one we're looking at here, was it loaded?
Yes.
And in this picture, can you tell us what all we see in this picture?
It's been secured, so if the slide is back, this is the magazine. So there was 1 in the chamber and then 9 in the magazine.
And they're still in the magazine at this point?
Correct.
Thank you. And I know you already said 9mm?
Yes.
Thank you. Just don't want to get them confused. Did you collect any other items of evidence from the home?
Yes.
Okay. And what were they?
2 cell phones were collected.
And I'm going to show you states 80. What is this item?
That is a cell phone which was on the living room couch.
And you collected it?
I did.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon, I'm showing you states 11. Can you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
And is that the phone we see? I'm sorry, what is it?
It is the cell phone that's on the couch.
And how do you recognize it?
It's the same color, everything.
And is it documented with the case number and the time of this case?
Yes.
Other than possibly some paperwork being added, does it appear to be the same or substantially the same condition?
Yes.
The state would ask to enter states 11.
Received.
Thank you. And how many phones did you collect?
2.
And where was the second phone?
In the garage.
And what do we see here in states 81?
So it's a shelf, so it's right outside, going back to the garage. So it's a shelf that's right here, the entryway into the house. So there's a shelf area.
And is that same phone depicted in states 82?
Yes.
I'm showing you states 12. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
The case number, what kind of phone it was, and the date that this occurred.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. And does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected it back in September of 2020?
It does.
Your Honor, the state would ask to enter states 12.
Received.
Once you collected these phones, what did you do with them?
Everything was secured back in the lab once I cleared the scene, but these 2 phones were assigned over to a detective so they can be searched.
And what detective was that?
Ski. Blazinski.
Thank you. His last name?
Blazinski.
Thank you.
You just call him Ski.
Other than after what we've just gone through from September 27th, were you later asked to do something else in this case?
Yes.
And when was that?
That was on October 1st.
And what were you asked to do?
To photograph Ashley Benefield.
And did you do that?
I did.
And where did that take place?
In our CID.
And I'm going to show you states 83, 84, and 85. Do you recognize them?
Yes.
And how do you recognize them?
They're the photos I took of Ashley.
And do they fairly and accurately depict how she appeared to you back in October 1st, 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, state would ask to enter and publish 83, 84, and 85.
No objection.
Received.
And what was the purpose of taking pictures of her?
So this was after the night that everything occurred, and I know Meghan took pictures of her that night, but sometimes bruising does not show up for a couple days, so that was why I went back to take pictures of her.
And did you observe any injuries on her body?
There were scratches. Yes.
I'm going to show you states 83. What's the purpose of this photo?
It's just to show who I'm taking a picture of.
And did you observe any injuries to Ms. Benefield's face or neck?
I did not.
And then states 84.
So that's the scratches.
And just for orientation purposes, that's the right side of her body?
Yes.
Thank you. And states 85.
The scratch in her back.
And for orientation purposes, what side of her body would that be?
Actually, I'm sorry, it's not her back. It's I believe it's right under her bra line.
It's been cropped quite down.
Yeah.
So it's the right side of her body.
Thank you. And were you asked to conduct any further investigation in this case?
No.
Your Honor, may I have just a moment with the counsel? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Conlon. I don't have any other questions.
All right, Mr. Taylor, do you need any of the displays?
I'd like to just take a moment, Your Honor, and look through the pictures.
Break it, you buy it. So, Mr. Taylor, would you like me to leave that on, or would you like me to get that out of your way?
You can pull it up.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
You took more pictures on that day than were actually introduced here this afternoon.
Correct.
All right. Let me pass this one to you and see if it's one of the photographs that you took. Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes, of course.
Yes, I did take this photograph.
Okay. State chose not to offer that to you, so I'd like you to identify it for us.
It is Ashley. I'm assuming it's her maiden name, Byers. It is her, and it's her concealed weapons firearm license.
Okay. And is it an accurate reproduction, just like all the other photographs that you took on that day?
Yes.
We move respectfully, Your Honor, and introduce it as defense exhibit number 2.
Any objection? Thank you. Received?
I want.
I'm sorry, so has that already been marked?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We pre-marked all of them.
Thank you.
Conlon, I want to just concentrate for a moment on the cell phone that you said that was on the couch that you recovered.
Yes.
Let me just try to refresh your recollection as to whether or not that cell phone, rather than being on the couch, was in the couch.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was originally in the couch, and then it was removed and put on top to take the photograph.
The crime scene photographs that you took, I want to make sure we understand. You went in there and took these photographs and processed it after the deputies and EMS were in there.
Correct.
So what your photographs tell us, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's the way the scene appeared at the time you took the photograph.
Correct.
It's not necessarily the way the scene was prior to the time you snapped your photograph.
Correct.
So in other words, the broom, just as an example that was in one of the photographs, that broom may very well have been knocked aside when the deputies were working on Mr. Benefield, trying to assist him.
Yes, that's possible.
And that could apply to the shell casings as well when the EMS people dragged Mr. Benefield out of the bedroom.
Correct.
You would have no way of knowing.
Correct.
All your photographs tell us is how things looked when you took the photograph.
Correct.
The blood marks from the bedroom all the way out to the front door, once again, is seen after the EMS went through there along with the deputies.
Correct.
The last thing I want to ask you is, you did, to my knowledge, 2 separate reports. Is that correct?
I believe it was one. If you would show me what you're looking at.
Sure. May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
So these are my property receipts.
Yes, okay.
So that would be separate from the original written report.
Okay, but these are reports that you did.
Correct, yes.
And one of them, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, is it Deputy Conlon or
No, I'm a civilian.
crime scene?
Yes, it's crime scene.
Or Ms. Conlon?
Yes, yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the dates of the report is on the day of the incident, 9/27/20.
Correct.
Okay, and the second one is on October 12th of 2020.
Yes.
And on both of these reports, Ms. Conlon, you, under type of case, noted as a homicide.
Correct.
When you're photographing this scene and executing your duties, all you know is that somebody died as a result of what happened there.
Correct.
You don't know whether or not it was a crime.
I do not know.
That's why you call it a homicide.
Correct.
If you knew it was a crime, you'd call it a murder.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Redirect?
Sorry, Judge, just one second.
No? All right. Hold on 1 second. Can she be released?
Yes.
Can she be released from her subpoena?
No, we'd like to keep her under subpoena.
All right, Ms. Conlon, in your trial,
I'm sorry. I'll let you finish.
you're not released from your trial subpoena. The rule of sequestration has been invoked, so that means you cannot discuss your testimony here today with anyone outside this courtroom, including the attorneys. You can't talk about it with any other witnesses. You can't talk with witnesses about what they testified about or what questions were asked of them. All right, so remain available.
Yes.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Can we publish defense exhibit 2, please?
Wait,
Absolutely, yes.
that too. That sense.
Yes, defense 2. And then, thank you very much, sir. I did get your amended witness list. It helps me keep track as we go. My notes are that, this is for everybody's knowledge, Deputy Baurle, CST Dvorack, CST Conlon, and Eva Benefield have not been released from their trial subpoenas. So I know you all know what that means. but you need to make sure your witnesses, because some of these folks, either they're also employed at the sheriff's office or they may know each other, and they are strictly prohibited from having conversations with each other.
I'll speak to that.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about, you had some motions, and I said objections earlier, but they could also be motions in limine regarding Barbara Russell and Alicia Byers.
Yes, sir. So I thought we had pretty much established that we weren't going to vet. Nonetheless, in an opening statement, the state clearly went down that road, extent of even designating that there were 5 of them. Now puts us in a position to have to respond to that unless it turns out to be a representation in an opening statement that never materializes. As the court knows, and the court emphatically instructed them what the lawyers say in opening statement is not evidence. So the concerns we have with Alicia Byers and with Dr. Russell is that we believe both witnesses' testimony is sought to go to the issue of child abuse. For multiple reasons, 403 of the Florida Evidence Code being merely one, and I don't need to re-argue this, the court's aware of it, we're all aware of it, the balancing act, the potential prejudice. We don't think that that should be admissible, and we don't think we should go down that rabbit hole. In addition,
I apologize for interrupting. I do not intend to ask either one of them about Tommie. And if it helps, the reason I said 5 complaints was, it's my belief that that comports with your ruling on what Detective Moreland would testify about. So that's why I represented that. It wasn't to get information out of either of these 2 witnesses.
well, that certainly helps my argument. My understanding, for purposes of Detective Moreland, is that the court is willing to allow him to testify as to the criminal aspect of his involvement. The court should be aware of that deputies do not conduct an investigation. They merely accompany the CP or DCF representatives to protect them for their personal safety. There is no criminal investigation. So I point this out to you, Your Honor, in anticipation of when Deputy Moreland does come to take the stand. If the state doesn't plan to go into anything having a relationship to the allegations of child abuse, then I don't know that we need to go any further to discuss that whether it's collateral or it doesn't relate to any material event.
And let me just clarify, that argument relates to Barbara Russell and Alicia Byers?
Alicia Byers, yes, and it may in fact relate to Deputy Moreland once I get a chance to voir dire him about his actual participation and whether or not he's just there for safety purposes to protect the DCF representative.
And I can just represent, I can voir dire him if you'd like, but I can represent to you that he did his own independent criminal investigation. But he and the DCF or CBT people all work together. They all have their different goals. But he did investigate.
Who would he be investigating? He would be investigating the target of the complaints. What relevance would that have to Ashley Benefield?
What I envisioned from all of this was I was allowing Detective Moreland to testify consistently with what I allowed at the stand your ground hearing. That there were 5 complaints made. I think I allowed the month and the year. The alleged perpetrator being Doug Benefield. An investigation was conducted. The general allegations were, and whatever they were, and that the cases were closed with no action. Exactly what I allowed at the stand your ground hearing. And then I did not allow Kim Griffin, remember that's the one from CPS, was she going to be an expert? Then it was no, she's not going to be an expert, but we want her to testify about those same 5 complaints from the CPS aspect that they were investigated and they were closed with no action. And that's where my ruling was no, because I think under 403 that allowing both of them to testify, and I completely understand that this is criminal, Moreland, right? If we have a silo, Moreland is criminal, 5 criminal investigations. Griffin is CPS, civil, 5 investigations. But my ruling was under 403, I thought allowing both of them to go into it could confuse the jury, mislead the jury into thinking, well, there were 10 investigations. So that's why I made the ruling I did. If you're asking me to revisit that, because I would allow Detective Moreland to testify that there were these 5 complaints that were forwarded to him. Is he CAC?
Yes.
So he was CAC at the time. They were investigating the information I gave.
How can I, if that comes out, how can I not bring out on cross that 2 of those complaints were from independent third parties?
Well, I did not allow them to go into who made the complaints. That was the subject of a prior motion where I said, no, you cannot go into who actually made the complaints. The state is prohibited from going into that.
And I won't ask for names, I won't look for identifications, but I think I'm certainly entitled to show that it wasn't just Ashley Benefield.
And I don't know if he knows that or not, because I don't think that question was raised at the stand your ground hearing or any of the motions I've covered. It might have been covered in a deposition, so I'm not aware of it, but I don't know if he even knows who made complaints.
Okay.
I don't know that he does.
Conducted 5 criminal investigations, and he doesn't know that 2 of the complaints came from a pediatrician and a psychologist.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to open a Pandora's box. I'm just saying I personally don't know. So you may want to talk to him tomorrow before he testifies, or maybe it was in the deposition. I don't know.
Okay.
But that's my ruling as of right now. Moreland can testify. Griffin can't. He can testify about those 5 criminal investigations that came to him as part of the CAC unit and the information that I allowed. If they want to get into more, you want less. So that's where it's not a compromise, but I think that's the correct legal ruling.
So now I have a second motion.
Yes, sir.
Knowing that Alicia Byers and Dr. Barbara Russell are not being called for purposes of child abuse, what possible relevance could they have to this?
I have no idea.
Why?
So is this the similar motion? They filed a motion in limine for me to force you to proffer your expert. Are you not motioning for me to force them to proffer theirs?
No, because if you would have granted theirs, then I would have said yes, but you denied theirs.
Goose and gander, but no, I denied it because I don't think there's any basis for that.
I just want to alert the court that I'm going to be on guard for that, and there's going to be some objections potentially.
Understood. And it happens all the time where depositions have been taken or reports have been written or affidavits have been done, and you can file motions in limine to limit or restrict certain areas, but I don't have any of that in front of me. Last thing I heard about anybody was I granted the request to depose Russell, and I haven't heard anything since then. So, well, what else can we talk about this evening before I let you go?
I think we're ready.
I have one small thing. We did do a stipulation for the ID of the victim.
Sure.
I think it's not an issue in this case. Nobody's objecting or arguing, but I just wanted that to be a part of the record.
All right.
I think she wants me to fingerprint it also, though.
I'm sorry, sir?
I think she wants my fingerprint on it as well.
If you would bear with me, Miss Benefield, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right. I just want to ask you about this trial stipulation that was just handed up. It's got the case style at the top, trial stipulation, and here's what it says. It is hereby stipulated and agreed by and between the parties that the identity of the deceased victim is Doug Benefield, white male, date of birth 10/2/61, a human being. It's got Mr. Taylor's signature. None of this is dated. It's got Mr. Taylor's signature. It has Ms. O'Donnell's signature, and it purports to have your signature right above your name and the word defendant. Is that your signature?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I'm not going to ask a lot of questions, but essentially, ma'am, do you understand that at trial, the state has to prove certain elements? One of those elements is that Doug Benefield is deceased, and is deceased. They'll have other things they need to prove. But you understand, by entering into this stipulation, you're basically saying you don't have to prove that state. The defense is agreeing that the deceased victim in this case is Doug Benefield.
Yes, sir.
All right, fair enough. That's all I wanted to confirm. So I've got this. I'm going to give it to the clerk so she can stamp it in, and then you all tell me when you want the stipulation read, and I already have the limiting instruction or the instruction about stipulations.
And I don't even know if we need to read it. Maybe we could read it during Dr. Vega just to be certain, but.
I will let you prosecute and defend your case. Like you fit. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.